Are we set?
Yes.
Oh, wait. Yep. All right, welcome everybody. I'd like to call to order the regular City Council meeting, Tuesday, March 26, 2019. And we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody would stand and follow with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. If we could have the roll call, please.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Doring.
I am here.
Councilmember Coverstein.
Here.
Chateau.
Here.
Knudsen.
Present.
Okay, and now we'll move to the public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on matters of municipal concern that are not on our agenda this evening. Each person's comments shall be limited to 4 minutes, please. Each person is entitled to speak on any, as we said, non-agendized item only once at the meeting. And brief questions by council may be posed by council members for clarifications, and council members may make requests that items be placed on future agendas, but in accordance with state law, no substantive discussion or action may take place unless and until the matter properly appears on the agenda. Is there anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, we will move to reports by staff and city council. Future
Shocking. That's shocking. I mean, what is wrong with this community?
Reports by staff and city council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. I will report that we had a closed session regarding city manager and city attorney reviews with no reportable action. And then I will ask our city attorney if there are any reports. Mr. Prestwich, our city manager.
Nothing tonight.
Ms. Mitz.
Thank you. Just a quick save the date that we are going to have our budget study session on Thursday, May 9th from 9 to noon at the firehouse. So wanted to be able to make sure everyone has ample time to put that on their calendars.
Thank you. That was a report from our finance director, our city clerk, our planning director, Noah Hausch.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. Just kind of a brief report out from the Planning Commission last Tuesday. They reviewed the final EIR and the final draft of the general plan, received some comments, provided staff a little bit of direction, and we'll be circling back with them for their final recommendation on April 16th. after they, or should they choose to make the recommendation for approval to the City Council. It will be scheduled for council review. We're currently looking at May 14th, so just to have that date for the council and the public. And it is worth noting that they seem to be leaning towards the environmentally superior alternative, which is a slightly altered general plan, and we'll have a lot more to talk about that when we come to you for adoption. And if we need to, we are tentatively looking at June 11th for a follow-up meeting after the May 14th initial review by the City Council.
Thank you. Ms. Smithies, our Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. I just want to say that we had our first community workshop for the downtown streetscape plan on Friday, March 22nd. I was thankful to see all council members there and the mayor on Friday. It was a great turnout. We had about 100 that turned in, that signed in on our sign-in sheets, but I would say there was easily double that amount because the way people came in masses, either with their friends, their spouses, or their family. And it was really a good, positive feedback. Just people came in, they stayed, they lingered. They were even there at 9:30 when we were setting up. So we might start a little bit early at on the next workshop that's coming in April or May, I believe. But there'll be a follow-up on this, and we'll get back to you when the next workshop is scheduled. I believe it's on the website, Cultivate St. Helena. For those who weren't able to make it, there will be an online survey that's hopefully live by the end of this week. So please check the website out. It's great. It's live. And give us your feedback. This is an important project for the city. So. And the other update is PG&E alerted us this past week that they'll be doing some major transmission work within our city and the county, starting around Spring Street, heading up over Madrona and into the county section towards Sonoma County. They'll be coming to our April 9th meeting to give us an update and a briefing, but they're planning the work in April, the end of April. So. There'll be helicopters and there'll be in-ground work in the city, such as the transmission poles. So I don't want to steal a thunder for PG&E. They have sent out notifications to property owners affected with the easements in their backyard, but there'll be more information coming in the weeks ahead.
Thank you very much. Are there any reports from the library, Public Works, or Police Department? No. Okay. We'll bring it back up. Mr. Knudsen, any?
The Parks and Rec committee did not meet this past month, but I would like to bring up something that I discussed with the manager and with one other member of council to see if I could get a second from someone else here so that it could be agendized for a future meeting, which was part of what you guys got when you appointed me was ideation, and an idea I had was for staff to help them understand our city better by potentially recruiting second homeowners and folks with ADUs that could be potentially empty to allow staff to come to, perhaps through a lottery, to come to town for a week to live in town, so that most of our staff do not, in fact all but one or two don't live in town, 3. And to have them to understand the issues that we face as a town by actually living here for a week. And my sense was that we could find some volunteers to potentially donate, that we could do a lottery with staff so that perhaps maybe 10 a year could participate, and that the city budget might pay cleaning fee at the end of that week process. And I know when the city manager brought it up in a staff meeting, there seemed to be some positive response, but also an additional idea from staff that this could also be for emergencies, that we might be able to also recruit folks that could allow our staff to be here if there are fires or earthquakes or other natural disasters. And so I'm hoping that we could agendize this for a future discussion.
I'll second it. Sounds great.
Very good. Ms. Chateau, any?
No, we had a library meeting. It was great, but we're going to hear more from them later.
Very good.
Nothing.
Mr. Dorian?
That vibrant pink blouse that you have on reminds me to tell our audience, our citizens, that March 31st is International Transgender Day of Visibility. And to keep that thought in mind, believe it or not, we do have transgender people in our community, in our school, in our businesses. we need to focus in on all of our people, appreciate the dignity of all of our people, and this is just one day out of the year where we can give ourselves a little thought thinking, yeah, we could do better, and make sure that we are treating all of our people equally and justly.
What is the date of that again?
March 31st, Sunday, International Transgender Day of Visibility.
Thank you. I've got a few items. First, continuing to have discussions and gather information about our housing strategy we're pushing forward on. Tonight, also, I'm wearing a shirt from the St. Helena Little League with the logo Character, Courage, and Loyalty. We will be bringing forth a resolution in the next couple weeks to support the fundraising and the rehabilitation of the baseball fields out there. So we want to give them some support. We are moving forward on the streetscape program, as Erica mentioned, online at cultivatesthelena.com. You can engage and put forward your thoughts on where we need to go. This is a project we are going to be doing. And since we are going to be doing it, how do we want it to look? How do we want it to serve our community? Knowing that this is something that we will be doing and we are moving forward. One other thing I'm working on is a number of community preparedness days. I've been working with the city manager, and we've coordinated with the fire department to use the firehouse on Saturday, April 13th from 10 to 12, and Tuesday, May 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. These are meetings to get our community together to talk about how we prepare for disasters so that we're ready when and if something comes. We know we have earthquakes, we have floods, we have fires here. We'll probably, at these meetings, be focused on fire preparedness. Mill Valley, California has a saying, it's called a culture of preparedness. And I think if we start making sure that we have what we need in place in terms of communication, community knowledge for when something like this might happen, we'll be able to better respond. One of the conversations I had with a PG&E representative made it clear that the more people in our community that have 2 to 3 days of emergency food and water brings the stress level way down. And so places like the Red Cross online provide these red backpacks that you can go and order that have emergency supplies that you keep in your car or your home. It's a red backpack, and it's got 2 to 3 days of food and water. You can order it for 2 people or 4 people, emergency supplies. And so the more people that have that, the better. So I got mine for my mother and myself. We got one. And we're looking at if the city can find some funding to help the community get these packages so that everybody has them. So that's something we're working on. But the dates for these meetings are, once again, April 13th, that's a Saturday, 10 to 12, and May 21st, that's a Tuesday, 6 to 8. And the more we get together and talk about what we need to do in an emergency situation, the more prepared we'll be. So I'll be continuing to promote those. And that is it for me. And we'll move on now to presentations and public recognitions. We have none. Staff briefing, none. We'll move to our consent calendar. Members of the council or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. So I will read the numbers, and if anybody wants to pull an item, they may. I'll start with 8.1, 8.2, 8.3. Okay, 8.3, we'll pull that. And then we will move to 8.4, and seeing none. So I will entertain a motion to pass all the items except 8.3.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Chateau?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. And so now I will read 8.3, and then we'll have a discussion. Consideration of a second reading and proposed approval of an ordinance proposing to amend and restate St. Helena Municipal Code, Chapter 17.136.050, temporary uses, to create a temporary use permit, an administrative review process, and a fee for such permits citywide. And this would be Mr. Hausch.
As identified, this is a second reading of an ordinance creating a temporary use permit process as well as the regulations, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions or give a brief outline of what the item is.
Maybe Mr. McKelly could come up and let us know what his concern is.
I'm Anthony McKelly, 1125 Cornella. I assume this is allowing pop-ups in town. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
Want to make sure. And I have a bunch of questions, so hopefully Nova will answer them when I'm done. I want to know how many business owners were asked in town about doing this temporary use. We have 5 businesses in our 2 buildings, and as far as I know, none were asked, and we weren't asked as building owners. The other question I have is that I think you can do a pop-up in a parking space. Yes, no? Asked to do that. So on the building on Oak Street, we have about 12, 14 parking spaces. I was in Napa the other day, and there was an ice cream cart there. Also had hot dogs and hamburgers he was selling. He was pushing the cart. Can I do that at that building on Oak Street? Also, can I park a, what do you call it, those trucks, those trucks that cook everything like Valvino has down there?
Food truck.
Food trucks, thank you. Can I park one of those in my parking space? Other question. Before, Tiffany's and Saks was not allowed to come into St. Helena by the Planning Commission. Can they come in now as this temporary use? And then if they're allowed in, can they stay in? And if they stay in, both our tenants, our 2 previous tenants on the building on Main Street, had to come to the Planning Commission. I think it was a $4,500 fee to be able to go in that business. So you have a pop-up at Keller's that is now going to become a permanent use. Is that lady going to get to circumvent that $4,500 fee? And how are you going to have a public hearing or a hearing before the Planning Commission on letting that permanent use stay there or not? And then if we use the parking spaces we have on Oak Street, what does that do for the requirement of a building that has to have so many parking spaces if now I'm putting temporary uses in there? Are you, for the time being of this temporary use, going to weigh the factor that we have to say have 12 parking spaces there, but we're going to use 2 by a food truck and maybe an ice cream guy, or maybe a fish guy, or somebody who goes to San Francisco to the market and buys oranges, lemons, and all that, and comes up for 1 day a week, kind of like farmer's market, and we allow them to do in our parking space? And I know it's all administrative when you do this, but I think there's a lot of questions, and I'm not for or against it. Understand that. I just want to know what I can do at my building, because whatever you say, that's what we'll do at the building, if we want to do that. If one of our tenants wants to give up one of his parking spaces to have somebody come and sell something today. And I don't know if each little use, I guess, will have to come back. I know there's a fee, and I'm assuming it's some type of a, they'll have to get a business license, but I'd like to know what that fee is going to be, or if it's going to be floating. Because I know in this, you said the only people that had to come back were people that wanted to put in restaurants. But I don't think it's fair for, let's say, a jewelry store downtown that has an empty building next to it, like the Goodman building, to allow somebody to come in and run a temporary pop-up there, not have to deal with parking, not have to deal with any of our restrictions that they would have had as a permanent. I just don't know if it's a good idea. But like I said, I'm not for or against it. I'm just asking as a building owner. Thank you.
So there's a number of questions. I'm going to do my best to answer them all, and then I'll invite Mr. McKelly back up, or the City Council, if I do not clearly articulate or don't get to all of them. So regarding the number of building owners asked, this idea actually came out of the Cosmont Downtown Retail Study. So the council and the public will remember we hired a consultant to give us some advice as to and some recommendations on things we could do to try to stimulate business activity in the downtown. They came back with an entire report, which is available on on the city website and was presented to the city council and the public. And one of the ideas in that report was to allow business owners more flexibility in how they operate and the opportunity to be creative in their operations. And so as an outgrowth of that recommendation, they recommended that the city allow temporary uses, pop-up uses, and this would both benefit existing business owners to try something new that may be a conditional use under our code as a permanent option, but temporarily they could apply to the city for a $500 fee and ask to operate this temporary element for up to a year. In addition, it could also be a new owner, maybe a ice cream vendor who has a cart, Mr. McKelly's example, could apply to utilize one of the existing parking spaces on the site through a temporary use. Nothing could be approved for greater than 1 year, but the application does give staff the ability to grant some relief to the mandated code requirements. However, we're required to look at the code requirements, and there are certain specific elements, signage, and I can't remember if parking was one of them, but it's not my staff report is downloading right now. I don't have the specific ordinance language, but we do have to consider parking requirements in making these actions. But a number of building and business owners were engaged through that downtown process. They were interviewed, they were asked for their recommendations, and as I said, this was one of the things that came out of that interview process. Your building on Oak Street is a good example because it's a multi-tenant space with its own parking lot, and somebody could propose to do something outside. Staff is required to utilize the zoning standards to review and make the decision, but it doesn't have to meet the standards 100%. Again, the idea is to allow some flexibility and creativity to stimulate some business interest and activity downtown. As a component of someone requesting to have one of these temporary uses, they could, in theory, ask for a food truck. Staff would be weighing that and obviously be looking at the surrounding uses, the proximity to existing restaurants, all those things, and making that decision. Staff may not choose to approve that. Staff may deny it, and those decisions would be appealable to the Planning Commission to kind of be the final arbiter of that decision-making process. To the question about formula businesses, under the current regulations, formula businesses could be allowed. However, they can only operate for up to 90 days. So they are not allowed to operate up to the year-long process that other temporary uses are allowed. And as I mentioned, there is a $500 fee. However, the council has supported waiving that fee for the first year, both to stimulate some additional business activity and creativity, and also to allow city staff to kind of work out the kinks in the process, because we are just creating a brand new process, and we want people to understand that when they come in. We may ask them to be a little bit, have some patience while we create the process. These applications will be routed to multiple departments, so the fire department, the police department, and Public Works will have the ability to chime in on those applications to voice concerns over maybe safety issues or circulation issues for the fire department to get to if they need to respond to an emergency. So we do have some plans for how that fee would be utilized and what the process would be, but again, we want to take the time to make sure that it's successful. So I think that answered all your issues?
There was one. What
Okay.
about the circumventing the fee? He said the 4,500.
Oh, so yeah, so no temporary use can go longer than 12 months, and some are limited to less than that. If someone wanted to then file the application fee to have their business be permanently approved as a conditional use through the use permit process, that would be require the full fee, go before the Planning Commission, and they would be required to stop their temporary use for a period of time before they could initiate a permanent use.
And this is what the people are doing at Kelly. You need to go to the microphone. Oh, sorry. At a previous meeting, Noah said that the temporary pop-up we have now has applied to be permanent. And I'm just asking if that's what they will have to do.
To clarify that, so that use is actually a permitted use. So home furnishing stores are a permitted use in the downtown under our updated regulations. And so if she would like to be permanent in that location, the business name is Wish. The only thing she will have to do is file a sign permit, because her sign was approved through the temporary use permit process.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Just to comment, I think the idea of the food in the parking lot, I'm wondering if that falls under events, where we do have food events listed there, farm stands, those kind of things. They have different regulations as far as their duration.
That's an excellent point. And again, it would depend on how the application is framed and what the use is being requested.
Does everybody feel comfortable where we are? I would entertain a motion to
Move approval of this item as recommended by staff.
Second.
roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Councilmember Shuto?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Coberstein?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. Thank you. We'll now move on to public hearings, seeing none. Old business, but I've talked to the city manager about moving an item up, 11.1, which is the appointment of 2 applicants to the Parks and Recreation Commission. They've been here now for about an hour and a half, and so I thought if we could move that up, we could make that happen. So this is item 11.1, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution appointing 2 applicants to the Parks and Recreation Commission, and consider leaving the recruitment open for the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee unified term of office until filled. This is prepared by the City Clerk, Cindy Zhifopoulos.
So it is appropriate at this time for council to deliberate, and then we will take a 5-minute recess for the vote, and then I'll collect the votes, tally, and report out, and then council can make their motion.
Well, I will just start off by saying we have 4 incredible applicants. We're very lucky in this community to have people care enough to want to volunteer and participate. There are 2 slots open. We've made it clear that there are other spots in town open too, so whatever we decide tonight, there's plenty of volunteer opportunity for everybody, and we thank the applicants so much for coming down. Do we have any thoughts to begin with?
And I'm not sure if you made this point that we spent an hour interviewing all 4 applicants right before the regular city council meeting. So we had a chance to allow them to make presentations, and they answered many of our questions.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor? Would
Yes.
you like to call public comment?
Oh, yes, I would. I will open the public comment on this item.
Hi, Donna Hines, Voorhees Circle. I would just like to put in a word for Ty Taylor. He's been a neighbor and a friend, and he is really involved in the community, has a young child, is involved in the recreation side, which some of our current Parks and Recreation commissioners are not, and I just think he'll bring some good and fresh ideas. I also really appreciate the fact that he took the time to attend one of our meetings, so he was not going into this process blind. So I think that's a plus in his favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? I'm going to just, I think we have each have a sheet with our name on it. I think I got the wrong one.
I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Oh, I have yours.
Okay.
She just told me to hand them out.
It's right here.
That was my bad.
That would have been fun.
Totally my fault.
And Mr.
right.
Mayor, council and mayor, you can take the vote during the recess.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. I wanted to make sure we had the right ones before anybody started. Okay, so do we have anybody that wants to start off and talk about some of what we heard today?
Well, I too was impressed with Ty coming to the meeting. I thought that was great. Being a coach, all of that, being involved. It did seem like Ty and Brooke were both strong with the financial background, and Ty in particular, I thought, with the operations piece that could be helpful with the parks. On the other side, Rebecca and Susan stood out to me with their engagement already, deep engagement with community and with the programming piece. Oh, those are my thoughts right now.
We're blessed to have 4 great applicants. For me, as a city council member, I'm trying to create as much diversity as possible on the planning, the Parks and Recreation Commission. Note that there's 2 segments of the Park and Recreation. There's parks, and then there's sort of the programming part of it. And so I'm looking, I will rely on David to a certain degree. Maybe you can speak to it. I'm not sure I know all of the members of the current commission, but I'm looking for a balance of folks who lend knowledge and experience to both of those components of Parks and Recreation. I'm looking for folks who are go-getters and hard workers. It's nice to have folks who have a lot of experience in the community and seen trends over many years, but also to encourage younger people with younger families who experience the park. So I'm trying to, in my mind, get a little bit of both of those in this commission, and that's probably how I will formulate my choices here. But all of the applicants are excellent, and thank you for applying. So that's kind of where I am. I think there's just, you know, it's a commission that has a lot of working parts to it, and so those are my thoughts.
Paul, Vice Mayor Doring, I think you hit the nail on the head. I also like to say is that I really like to see all the enthusiasm of the applicants, which I think is really a nice compliment to the existing group. And so I think that they're sort of the bias of these 4 individuals is for action and for participation. And I think I think that that's a very all of the current members of the Parks and Rec committee are active users and participants in the parks and the recreation programs, and I see this as sort of adding additional fuel to the fire over there. And we've got a great staff, and there's a lot of community focus on parks and recreation, whether it's active recreation or passive recreation, and there's so many things that we can do, and I'm excited for us to do it now that we have a real focus on quality of life issues. And the comments that are made about the applicants, I think they're absolutely right, and I'm happy to have all of them, and I hope that those that aren't selected, I hope they'll participate in the other places in our community that we can use volunteers, and that's my ad.
I think the only thing I would add is I always appreciate it when somebody has sort of a bigger focus overall of where is this commission going or what are we hoping to do. And it's difficult to choose among these applicants as far as that goes, but some of them did speak more generally about activities or things or bridging the generations with programming, which kind of struck me, maybe because I'm a person who doesn't have young children and am not engaged in that part of our parks and recreation, and makes me wonder, if there are some possibilities there. But yeah, whoever we choose here is going to be a great addition, in my view.
Yes, this is the enthusiasm tells me we're in for a great year. Really, this is people in our community stepping up, wanting to participate, and so it's a very difficult choice. But I think if we take 5 minutes now to make our choices, then we'll add up the votes. So we'll take a little break, a 5-minute break, and come back. And thank you all for submitting your applications for this. Take a little break. that.
I think I'm going to go into the ice cream cart business.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it. I can run an ice cream cart. I can hand out business cards at the same time.
Well, what we need is the fruit with the chili.
Yeah, fruit.
I'll do that with you. We'll be around town. Paul and Jeff's. Huh?
So I'm going to keep talking to her on break. What else do you see everybody?
Yes, true.
Like I'm allowed to come out.
Oh, I'm not looking. What? What? Oh.
But it's great farming ground.
All right, I would like to bring the meeting back to order, please. Thank you. All right, we have voted, and the city clerk has tallied the votes. Do you have a vote to read out to us?
I do. After counting the votes and double checking, we have the apparent top votes went to Susan Kenward and Rebecca Weeman.
Very good. Is there any further council discussion on this? Well,
Yeah, I think we need to note that it's an informal poll. It's not a binding vote. And so it's up to the mayor to still make the appointment with a second, right?
yes.
Yeah.
So
Nomination.
I will be making a motion that these are the who we appoint. If I can get a second on that,
I'll second it.
very good.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Councilmember Chateau?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody. And as we said, please stick around because there'll be another slot very soon that we're going to need volunteers in. So it's appreciated that you came down and participated. So we will now move to, or back to, yes, item 10.1. This is consideration of a resolution authorizing amendment number 1 to Agreement 2019-0026 with Cosmont Companies in amount of $50,000 for enhanced infrastructure financing district analysis, preparing a request for qualifications, RFQ, request for proposals, RFP process, continued City Hall site analysis, and as needed real estate advisory services for a total not to exceed amount of $125,000, and authorizing a fiscal year 2018/19 budget increase of $50,000 to 101-4300-2130 from general fund reserves. And this is this the city manager?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So on February 6th, the council received a presentation from the Cosmont companies related to specifically hotel analyses in town. And at that workshop, we also talked about enhanced infrastructure financing districts and the potential for a district to provide tax increment financing for various civic improvements. And at that time, there was council interest in moving forward and taking another step toward the possible formation of an EIFD, this Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. And tonight, this amendment facilitates that process. The steps would include taking a preliminary tax increment analysis, taking a look at the initial estimates of bonding capacity, discussing and identifying recommendations for the governing board composition, voting and approval procedures, formation milestones, timing, etc. And so this is a step that wouldn't form the district. It would just essentially take you up to the edge of possible formation. We would also be looking at what are, for example, 11 promising parcels that would be potentially part of this district. Secondly, this amendment would facilitate ongoing City Hall site analysis. Cosmont did prepare some thinking about the City Hall site, and as we move forward concurrently with the process where we have asked for proposals related to library visioning, recreational facility visioning, some additional space analysis on City Hall, refining that, and look at complementary issues with all three structures. That particular process, we received 8 proposals about a week ago. We'll be bringing a contract and award for that to the council relatively soon. We would anticipate Cosmont integrating with that concurrent analysis and as part of this particular amendment as well. And then there are as-needed services referenced here on an ongoing basis. We may have questions related to real estate advisory services as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any initial comments from the council? Questions? Okay, public comment first. I'm going to open for public comment, if there's any public comment on this issue. Seeing none, I will am I seeing some? Please, thank you.
Steve Goldfarb, 455 Bella Vista Court, St. Helena. I'm just a little confused. I understand. I've read the information that's been provided. I think it's a great direction for the city to go. I have to say that I've been watching the city go in this direction for 9 years, and we get to a certain place and then everything falls apart. So I'm curious, one has the, and I apologize, I have not been here, I've been hiding. Has the council made a determination that as part of this, that they're prepared, based on the recommendations you've received to date, to actually go forward and put a hotel on the Adams Street property, which would be a big financial part of this district and to make tax increment financing work? Or are you still deciding whether or not that's a direction the council wants to go? Because if the council hasn't made that decision, I just get concerned about spending more detailed money to determine whether or not what the initial analysis was actually accurate. So I don't know what the status is of that project and how it relates to the work that you're asking Cosmont to do now.
I think what this is getting more definition from them about this so that that decision can be made. That decision has not been made. But this is bringing it out with this EFID district to take a look at the viability of that as a possible option.
Okay, I'll leave it at there.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the council. Do we have any initial?
Yeah, I want to thank you for that question because I'm sensitive to the fact that just about 2 years ago we had a meeting here where it was recommended that the city sign an agreement with a developer for Adams Street. And it came as a surprise to many people because there had been basically no public discussion about it for quite a long time. I think that's part of the reason, I know for myself, why we initiated the SHAPE process. It was to really understand what our needs were in town in terms of public buildings and the cost of them and the cost of maintenance, not just the cost of construction, but ongoing maintenance, because we really needed to know what our financial needs were. And following that, we had the downtown strategy, and now we're, talking about other things. I think David Gates said it very well the other day when he said the council has asked us to design the stove, and they're busy working on remodeling the kitchen. I think we're actually remodeling the whole house. I mean, we have a variety of things in front of us that need to be addressed, and we need to figure out the best way to do it. So I believe we are going to try, if we approve this, we're going to try to schedule a special meeting with the Cosmont companies, probably later in April, where we want the community to come, and it's another opportunity to have your input about everything they do, including the potential of a hotel on Adams. I think one thing that came up through the SHAPE process was some public acceptance of a smaller hotel where we would not sell all of the city property to the developer, and where we would specifically ask for some requirements to integrate some public use of the property or access, whether it was the ability to continue to walk along Adams or something else. And so that public meeting is an opportunity to further elaborate on those concepts. And then I think after that, we will be making the decision whether we are going to ask Cosmont to issue another RFP and what the specific requirements would be that we would put in it. Speaking for myself, I think it's very important for us to consider it. We literally have hotels swirling all around us, and there's going to be an opportunity to strike, and there's going to be a time when an opportunity is lost. And I think we have to examine what the possibilities are. I think this EFID district is an important thing to consider because to me it's like it's almost like an insurance policy that the city would have if we create this district where we could have a significant property tax increase that would enable us to issue bonds that would not be general obligation bonds and would not raise the property taxes of our residences. And to have that district in place and then have a financial plan of what the money could be spent on is a way to continue to function and do the things that we need to do without necessarily going directly to our residents and stressing them, or going to our businesses like we proposed in the P-bid and taxing them. So I think it really needs to be looked at, and it has the gives us the opportunity to put money towards low and moderate income housing, towards libraries, towards parks, towards infrastructure in the ground. And frankly, I think we're going to see a list of things we have to do that touches on all those things. So I don't want anybody to think we're hiding the ball here on a hotel on Adams. I think it's coming around for a discussion again, and it would be time to make a decision. I personally think the EFID district would probably suffer greatly without it, and so it's a consideration as to whether that should be sort of the keystone that would make it financially feasible, and we'll have to find that out from the Cosmont companies. So.
Do you want to offer any more with respect to the public engagement process? And you know, it's very difficult because we're at one moment at a time in a meeting, and it would take hours to explain what we've been doing for the last 2 years that led up to this meeting. But it is important that we do that. The way this is on the agenda, it does look like, oh, what's going on here? But as I understand it, to confirm what Mary's saying, there will be further public engagement, really on the in conjunction with our budget process, our long-range financial forecast, what the needs of the city are, what the recommendations were again, and from the SHAPE process, and just a study of the various alternatives that the community has available to do the things that we needed to do. And frankly, that's what we didn't do 2 years ago when we rolled out, that RFP process. Maybe the city manager can comment further on that.
So just as, I guess, a little background, the SHAPE process, which was about a 6 to 7 month process, included a look at our existing assets and identified an ongoing maintenance need of approximately $400,000 a year moving forward. Today we're investing $100,000. Last year we invested $50,000. It gave us, that process also took a look at the cost of a new City Hall facility, and that was estimated at approximately $8 million as a placeholder just for planning purposes. In terms of, and so that SHAPE report helped inform some of the next steps, which included a workshop in September of 2018, which led to an engagement with Cosmont in the fall of 18, which led to a City Hall and site analysis that has not been presented yet, but is ready to go once this other work is begun. And then the hotel analysis, which was presented in February last month. And so the public engagement that's anticipated with this contract would include a public meeting on a special meeting workshop on April 24th. We don't have a time or location identified yet. That'll be a next step after tonight. That would provide a high-level EIFD analysis. So this would include some specific work at numbers, but it wouldn't have the refined numbers. They need a little bit more time to look at all of those parcels, but this would be a check-in with the community and the council and an early look at those numbers with a refined analysis approximately 3 to 4 weeks later, probably mid to late May, with that presentation to the city council. At that point, you would receive a recommendation for process related to an RFQ and RFP. Should you want to go that direction, that would still require a need to put that together and then release it and receive proposals. And then concurrently, a process, should you want to move forward on an EIF, the formation of a EIFD district, you would be ready to move forward on that in the late May, early June timeframe under the current schedule.
Thank you.
I have a comment, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So I think there's a couple of things to juggle here. One is that it's not exclusively Adams Street. It's also potentially other properties, the Railroad Avenue property, for example, on this EIFD. And at least from my perspective, my understanding is that for communities of our size and resources, that we're actually under indebted. That in general, the city has lower debt than we might have and be within sort of a medium or median debt for a city of our resources and size. So I'm not certain that the EIFD is a more cheaper or less expensive approach to money if we need it for City Hall. And I think clearly we will need some funds. And so I think it should be considered one of potentially other solutions, and it'd be interesting to put it in context when we do get a review from the Cosmont folks. Another sort of point is I know that the school district has done a very good job over the years of sort of maintaining sort of moderate indebtedness, even while they've created these great facilities. And so they've never sort of spiked the indebtedness of the school district in order to pay. That's my understanding. And I would encourage the city also to sort of look, sort of given our resources and our tax base and our citizens' expectations for capital improvements, what have other cities like us done? That's it.
I agree with that. I'm hoping that we can see different options. I don't know what this one is, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you. So I'm in support of moving forward with looking at this, but I also agree we need it to be one of many options we're looking at, other options. The SHAPE committee put forth options. I think that if we're looking at municipal finance, we want to look at what do other cities like us, where do they sit, so that we know what range that we can work in. I think this is a very interesting idea. I have a couple quick questions. So the idea is not that it's an added tax, but it's leveraging off of the property taxes from the district that we know will be coming in. Is that correct?
What it does is it what this council would do is identify up to 11 parcels that we anticipate would change in valuation. So as a project is developed, hypothetical would be a hotel project on someone's property, or a housing project, office building. And we can pick, and I think some of us have done some preliminary thinking about a few parcels that would make sense to include in the district, and these do not have to be contiguous. That's one of the advantages of this district. But to identify parcels that we anticipate, and this is, I believe, a 45-year time horizon, but identify parcels that we anticipate would transition relatively soon, and have a change in valuation, and a portion of that change in value would be then rolled into this district. and create a revenue stream upon which the city can bond against. And what I didn't mention were the other, beyond City Hall, we're going to be talking about a renaissance of the library, whether that's inside the building or, somewhere else, but also streetscape enhancements. We know with the Cultivate St. Helena process downtown, phase 1, the sidewalks on Main Street have a funding source, the grant, the $1.2 million grant. But there are other streetscape amenities that this community may desire. We may desire a recreation facility. Councilmember Koberstein mentioned housing, affordable housing. This financing instrument allows for those dollars to be rolled back into projects like that.
So let me ask another question about, I think in the days of redevelopment or these kinds of districts, the money would stay within the district, but because this is created with 11 properties, up to 11 non-contiguous, the money couldn't be used anywhere on any capital improvement projects?
Anywhere in the city.
Anywhere. Okay, so that's different maybe than in the past where a district was a physical area and it had to stay within that district. This is different because of the non-contiguous aspect.
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm going to open the public comment in just a second, but I want to make one other comment of one other thing that I think is worth looking at when we're looking at these types of options for municipal finance. We have projects we know we're going to do, so how are we going to finance it? I think we have a good group of minds, trying to put this together. One thing I would like to look at also down the road is the idea of public banking, and this is something that's coming forward around the country now. The city of San Jose decided to look at seriously at public banking, and this is where the city owns a bank or joins with other public institutions to create a bank to help with how interest is done on loans, et cetera. So many options. I think this is an excellent one to look at, and so in my opinion, worth moving forward on. And I would like to open the public comment if there's any other public comment at this time. Nope. Okay. Seeing none, I'll bring it back up to the council, and if we have no other comment, would entertain a motion to move this forward. This is in my mind, to bring another option out into the light and look at it so that we see all the options available, because we are moving forward on projects. So I would entertain a motion to take the recommended action.
Move approval of the recommended action.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Councilor Koberstein?
Yes.
Chateau?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. Okay, so that is 10-1. We'll skip 11-1. We did that, and we will move to 11.2. This is May 4th, 2019, City of St. Helena Spring Cleaning Day discussion by Mayor Ellsworth. Yeah. Well, I'm actually very excited about this because it wasn't my idea. This was something that was brought up to me by our interim police chief, Tim Foley, who worked with Mark Prestwich up in Nevada City. And he mentioned that one thing they did up there was called a spring cleaning day. And they would pick a day in the spring, and they would get every service organization, every school, every group in town, every church, and to identify people who wanted to volunteer, coming up with lists of projects, talking to the Public Works Department to see if there's a list of projects that they would like some help on, and then sort of just create an organized approach, maybe from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on a Saturday, and see what we can pull off in one day, all working together. These don't have to be big projects. These can be things like cleaning parks. They can be things like painting fire hydrants, painting curbs, smaller projects. Let's see, I have a little bit of a list here. Little fix-it projects, things like that. And my mother thought of the idea that maybe afterwards there's food trucks. So there's something to look forward at the end or something like that. One thing that's come up is that the city of Napa just made a ban on glyphosate, on using Roundup in the city. We're talking with the county about it too. We know St. Helena has eliminated the use of it, but it adds an element of, takes more person power to do the weeding. And so is that something we as a community can volunteer to help with and get a jump start on that by May 4th? I'm not going to say anything about raking for obvious reasons, but cleaning, finding things that we see in the community that need to be done, if we start to identify them, and then we put together the volunteer groups and we all go out there together, I think we can do a lot in one day. So that's my thought. I can open it to the council if anybody has any. Okay.
Do you want to do public comment
Sure, I'll
first?
open it to public comment if anybody has any thoughts on this. Okay. Oh, no, we have somebody, yes?
Nobody wants to pull weeds.
Norma Ferris, Tenerife, Cunha. I think it's a really great idea. The only thing that I wonder is about liability. That must be something that the city will need to consider. How does that, if we all sign a waiver or that, because we'll have children participating as well.
Yes.
So it's just a detail that you need to tackle.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think we'll have a waiver. Knowing that other cities have done this, I think we can use a model, an existing model.
City has a beautiful waiver form.
Okay.
I hope there's nothing that we need to wait. I mean, I hope that no one will injure themselves in this cleanup day. I mean, please. I think it's a great idea. Fantastic. Wonderful.
Okay, so we're planning May the 4th. So we'll get the wheels rolling, and then if everybody just sort of keeps it in mind, makes the list of projects and the list of volunteers, and we'll work to coordinate it all and make a day of it. So thank you. Any other? No. Okay.
Great.
Yes. So we will move on to 11.3. This is the consideration and award of nonprofit grant application funding in the fiscal year 2019 and 2020 operations budget in the amount of $190,000. And this was prepared by Mandy Kellogg, and she's.
All right. This item is presenting the nonprofit funding request for fiscal year 2019-20. Applications were due to the city by February 28th at 5 p.m. The funding allocation per the nonprofit guidelines is $50,000 for community enrichment grants and $140,000 for programmatic grants, for a total of $190,000. The city received 21 applications with funding requests totaling $255,840. The mayor and vice mayor met with staff to review the applications and make funding recommendations based on the funding allocation and the guidelines. On the screen is a listing of the proposed funding and is available to adjust if necessary. We would like to pass this to you for further discussion, and we did invite the applicants to answer any potential questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any, have the applicants seen the numbers yet? You have, so everybody's seen the numbers, okay. So are there any, is there any comment initially, and I'll open it for comment, to public comment, but any initial comment from council on the numbers?
Just a question, Lincoln Theater, why those ones were, why that was blank?
That was a very difficult one. You know, we had to weigh where the funding was going and tried to focus as much as we could on what we felt were sort of focused on the mission of St. Helena. And so as we weighed where the money went, we felt it was better served in other areas. And so that was one that didn't receive the funding that it did in the past.
Okay.
Is there any council comment? No? So I'm going to open it to public comment. If there's any public comment or questions or thoughts on the allocations, these are the proposals. If we need to adjust, we can listen to some discussion of that.
Thank you for not putting cleanup day on May 18th, which is NIMBASH. No, I just want to say, amidst all the home remodeling and restructuring and that you're all doing to make our home, St. Helena here, what it will be and could be, I'm very impressed that you're still considering all of us a piece of the importance of that, and that, nearly $190,000 is being spent on programs that we feel are very committed to creating community and home. And just want to thank you for including us. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what you do is critical to this town. This is our town. You are our town, and so it's important to us.
Well, I didn't bring my clarinet tonight, and I surely should have done that. I could play May the Saints Go Marching In. The St. Helena Community Band really appreciates your helping us with our fundraising. We were funded for 10 years by Francis and Eleanor Coppola, and appropriately they're stepping back, and they're still actively involved with this band, but it is a community band, and we have musicians from Anglin to Calistoga, actually in Napa, that come because of our really superb director and the real commitment by the board to be the finest community band that we can be, and we work very hard at that. If you're a musician, why don't you talk to me? We'd love to have new musicians. We play about 40, 45 people. It's a pretty good sized band. And if you can't see us any other time, be sure you come around the 4th of July. We do our annual Lyman Park incredible patriotic concert with free root beer floats. Thank you.
I have to concur. It's an incredible band. I saw the performance twice last year, and I was blown away.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Hi, Jenny O'Cone with the Up Valley Family Centers. I just want to thank the City Council and the city for, again, supporting the nonprofit community, and in particular, the increased opportunity to apply in the programmatic realm. For us, showing that we have city support in the way of funding is really important to other funders, and knowing that our own city supports the work that we do and thinks it's important. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barrett Dahm, the Executive Director of the Robert Louis Stevenson Museum. I just want to say thank you also for including us for the second year in a row to potentially get city funding. It means so much to us, especially this year since it's the 50th anniversary of the Robert Louis Stevenson Museum. And if you haven't walked by, you can probably see me busting my butt in there, painting brand new display cases that were generously donated and removing the red carpet. And we're really diligently working to make this a tremendous year and bring the community even more into the fold of the museum and serve everybody. And with the City Council's help, it just goes so much farther. So thank you.
Thank you. When are you reopening?
May 1st, if I can get all my painting done.
Okay.
My name's Craig Bond. Excuse my voice. You would think as a vocal teacher I might sound better than this. But I got it this morning and it was gone. I just want to thank you also for your support of the St. Helena Choral Society. It's the one that you can barely see at the bottom there. We're so grateful for your support. We have a children's chorus, a teen choir, a vocal jazz group, and the St. Helena Chamber Singers that present a huge concert every Christmas. And every year we've noticed that the expense of running these organizations just gets higher and higher. So what a great blessing to have this for our group. Very grateful, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. You've been an incredible asset to this community. Thank you very much.
Lorraine Stewart, Advisory Council for the Up Valley Village, which is part of Calabria. And I want to thank you for supporting the New Kid on the Block. I think we are perhaps the only first-time grantees. And just give you a little bit of a helicopter view, 15 years ago when the Family Center was first being started in St. Helena, we talked about wanting to take care of our community from birth to death. And, you know, small goal, small challenge. And not too long after that, Rionda House came along, and that kind of started to create the bookends. And during that time, St. Helena and the Up Valley realized that we really were not being served as well as we should by both the county and the larger nonprofits down valley. So there was a great effort, and organizations such as the Family Center and now Rionda House have done a fabulous job of inviting, bringing, saying and asking that these organizations should be serving us. And so we really do have a birth to death range of services available, which does not mean that they are necessarily accessible to everybody. And that is the ongoing work and project of nonprofits. The Up Valley Village fills just a little spot, and that spot is between the person who can go to Rionda House and can still live at home, but really shouldn't be climbing ladders and changing light bulbs. And some of them have stopped driving, and that nice balance of wanting to be independent and continue your life and your friends in your community, but you do need some help. We are a combination of membership-based, and with your wonderful support, we now will be able to work with Rionda and the Family Center to bring in those who cannot afford to be members. I would like to introduce Celine Regaya, who is, first of all, the new CEO of Calabria. So she's... Congratulations. She's 6 weeks into it. And I've been working with her for about 2.5 years now. And Calabria has been a fabulous partner for us. So.
Hi, thank you. So yeah, 6 weeks into it, but 20 years with the organization. And so Calabria Care, formerly Napa Valley Hospice and Adult Day Services, we've been serving the community for 40 years. And some of the work that we've been doing, we were looking at how to further our mission, and that we have hospice, we have our day program that serves the entire county, we have our palliative care services, and then we started looking at transitions of aging. We have services that are co-located at Rionda House that involve caregiver support groups, family caregiver consultations. We do a brain fitness class. And so there was an original person, George Vare, who came to our Healthy Aging Population Initiative, and he had this vision that we needed to create the services as we age in place for the communities that we want to live in. And so there was the advisory council members, they invited Calabria Care to conversations at Rionda House, and we birthed the village 2 years ago, and it's one of the a project that we're really proud of, and having these scholarships to help people access really quality life things. I'm a volunteer in the village, and I'm helping somebody right now declutter their house that had a serious accident and can't do those things, and giving transportation or letting people go to the theater or doing things that they no longer can do. And it really is a village in the sense that we have volunteers and we have the memberships, and it is a community within a community. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. Is there any other community or public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on, bring it back to the council here. And so is the action that we are discussing moving this forward as we've created it?
I just have one comment. I want to thank the mayor and the vice mayor for all of their hours of going through these applications. It's much appreciated. I also really appreciate that this year one of the first questions is, how does your project tie into the city's goals, mission, vision statement? And I think some of the responses there were right on point. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment?
I second on that. I mean, really, a lot of effort there, and I want to also thank all the nonprofits who are applying, because it's a process for them as well. So,
and what you do extends what we can do. We're a small town, and we have a certain amount of resources, and your interests and your efforts extends what we can do as a city to create a complete community. So it's critical to have you. And so this program is something we need to just keep refining and making better and stronger. This is how we keep this all together. So it could not be done here without you. So with that, then I will entertain a motion to take the recommended action.
So moved. This is for funding in the amount of $50,000 for programmatic grants and, wait, yes, 50 and 140, $190,000 total, as described in the staff report.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
And we have a second, and a roll call, please.
Councilor Copperstein?
Yes.
Chateau?
Yes.
Knudsen?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dory?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. Okay. We'll move on to item 11.4. This is consideration and proposed approval of a resolution rescinding Resolution 2015-25 and updating the schedule of library fines and fees, which, 1, eliminates overdue fines on all materials loaned by the St. Helena Public Library, 2, eliminates interlibrary loan fees, and 3, waives meeting room fees, use fees for certified nonprofit organizations. This is Chris Crichton, our library director.
Good evening, Council. Library staff and the Library Board of Trustees hope that tonight you will consider updating the 3 elements, of the library's schedule of fines and fees. The St. Helena Library would love to join a growing list of libraries who are going fine-free. These include the public libraries of Salt Lake and Nashville, and in California, San Mateo, Contra Costa, Berkeley, and San Diego. And San Francisco is hoping to join this list in June. We also hope to eliminate the interlibrary loan fees. These fees have never applied to our consortium partners' items, and also to waive the room use fee for certified nonprofits. They serve and help in our community, so it'd be nice to offer them a space that they could have for free. The experiences of the libraries who have eliminated overdue fines has been positive, with negligible to no increase in their overdue items rates. So people are still returning things on time. Fines were intended as a way to motivate the return of materials. However, that's never been very effective. So we've discovered ourselves that if things are overdue, it's much easier after a few months to give people a call, and they will return them. Instead, these fines cause a barrier to library use. Overdue fines accumulate, and they block access definitely for low-income families who are worried about coming to the library and going, "You have a fine," and paying those and feeling obligated to pay them. E-resources, things like our Hoopla, which is e-books, e-audios, Canopy, and Overdrive, they're already fine-free. The more people use those, our fine revenue will go down anyway. And those are a benefit for people who have access to technology. If you don't have that access to technology, you lose the fine-free ability of those, the benefit of those. Staff would also prefer to help patrons find answers to information needs or their next great read, instead of collecting fines and trying to follow the ever more time-consuming cash handling procedures required. No offense, April. Finance has come, and the auditors have come at us, and it takes more time for staff to process money, to do all that we need to do. And also, in fiscal year 2017-18, the library only took in $6,000. So that's not really all that much. And the staff estimate is that it costs about $2,300 to process that money. So we're not overall, we're not making all that much. So fines have never been a significant source of revenue, but then libraries were never intended as a revenue-generating venture. They were intended as information and learning resources and centers, and we tried to do that. So we're hoping that tonight you will adopt the resolution and apply these updates. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any initial
I have
questions?
one pressing question. What about a star book or one of the books that are really popular?
You know, people return those quickly, and no, they wouldn't accrue fines. We'll see how it goes. We can change that in the past, but no, the plan is not to. Most people, they're so happy to get it, and they are. And they also know that things are off. The other people want to read them too, so people are usually very good at returning those.
Thank you.
For all of us parents who've already paid a lot of fines, can we get a rebate now, a reimbursement?
Well, actually, kids' books we've always been 5 free, so
I know.
you can now return them a little later. But
okay,
I have a question.
Yes,
a further question. So, do you have? I mean, so the total 6,000 in fines. Is it widely dispersed, or is it on a few sort of laggards that tend to use, keep books or
there
magazines
are some of those,
something?
and I think some of it is they are supporting the library. Staff would encourage them to instead give to Friends and Foundation, so the money would stay with the library. But
yeah, it's funny because
sometimes it's that person who you feel so bad for, and staff is good at having sympathy and will waive fines when someone has a story, they couldn't make it because they're a senior, they can't drive, so they couldn't get the item back to us, or it got with a family member who was supposed to drop it off and it got underneath the seat of the car. We've had that happen with DVDs.
So follow-up question. So the intent of fines was always to encourage return of materials in a timely way. And so Salt Lake City, Nashville, and others, is the belief then that it will not really impact the timely return of materials?
They've been at it for a while, and they've reported that there hasn't been an increase, and some of them have actually said it's decreased, the slight decrease in late.
Well, it'd be interesting, I don't know if you track that, but it'd be interesting to see that if we go forward with this, to see sort of, after the fact, does that mean the stuff is sitting out there and that you're getting less timely returns? It'd be interesting to see that.
It would be, we'd need to figure out a way to do it. I think there is a way. So.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to open it to public comment. There's a public comment.
Anthony McKelly, St. Helena. I use the library every week. It's a great service. But since we're talking about the library, I got a question. 2 years ago with the previous council, one of the things was if we pass the sales tax, we'll reopen the library to its old hours. That was 2 years ago. Is the city going to ever restore the library hours we had? I mean, you got your sales tax increase, but I haven't seen any push or anything to give us back Sunday or longer hours like we used to have. It's just a question. But a lot of people use that library. I mean, I don't know if you track how many people. I mean, there's a lot of people, and a lot of elderly people, use it on the weekend. And I'm just wondering if that's ever going to come about. Thank you.
So is maybe that something we can look at in terms of what it costs to do something like that, so we can?
Right now, we're having an issue already trying to staff the hours that we have at times. Staff is earning more vacation than they did. We have people who have longevity. That's become an issue. So right now, we wouldn't be able to staff more than the 6 days a week that we're currently open.
Okay, so it's not just a matter of funding, but staffing as well.
Yes,
okay.
The biggest issue is staffing.
Okay.
And for the Measure D, or the measure that was talked about, it actually, my understanding was that it was almost to keep more services the way they were. So at that point already, it was difficult.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Library Director Creedon, can you, do we have, maybe I should know this, do we have volunteer librarians in our?
We do have volunteers that help out. They help with shelving, they help with other things. They're limited in what they can do because we have paid employees that do quite a few of our jobs. So they're not supposed to, I believe legally, supposed to take away from those people. So we do have volunteers who help at various things, but...
I guess I was going to see if that was potentially an option for extending, but it sounds like...
If there's
public,
privacy issues.
yeah.
And
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, privacy issues with, we have their information in our computer system, and there's the issue of what they're checking out too. You wouldn't want someone to know that you're checking out. The example that I always got in library school was how to do your own divorce. So that can get around, I'm sure, St. Helena pretty quickly and some other small towns. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's okay, David. I know you're frugal.
Whoops.
We have had volunteers that do a lot of things in the library. So.
Of course, I will support what Mr. McKelly said, but
I think I have to reopen the public comment.
Oh, sorry.
So, yeah, that's okay, please. I'll reopen it, yes.
Yeah, I support what you said, but well, I understand what you go through. I think I just want to support all these initiatives more than anything because it moves out of the punitive part and just makes it, we takes like something that is punishment related to the library. We go to a library because we want to, and yes, we do forget. So what you did at some moment is that now we receive those robocalls that say, hey, you have something that you haven't returned. And that changed because it's, we all forget it's not. So that was really helpful. So I totally support, and of course the fact that nonprofits can use, there's several spaces in the city, but the library is again one that unites a lot of people. So I support that.
Thank you. So I'll close public comment, and if there's any other council discussion?
I strongly support it because I've felt the relief and benefit myself, both from the kids when that happened. I was just like, oh, thank goodness. When they forgave the fines, and I knew that wasn't a thing, and I was able to come back later. Same even recently, I took the kids down to Napa, and we got books there. And I was surprised when I got home to find that they just automatically renew you after 3 weeks. And there was that generous spirit again that Norma spoke about, where I was just so relieved because I needed to get to Yountville or Calistoga, couldn't fit it in. And then once I saw that I got another 3 weeks, I made it happen like that. And it was a wonderful feeling. So I think it's a good thing to do.
Very good. Well, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution, excuse me, rescinding resolution 2015-25. Excuse me.
Do I have to jump in?
You do. I've got a lozenge. Yes, please.
I don't think we have to read this whole thing. Is there a motion to approve the recommended action by staff?
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Chateau.
Yes.
Oberstein.
Yes.
Knudsen.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring.
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Doring, for carrying the ball there. Okay. We'll move on to 11.5. This is discussion and direction to the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee and city staff on the proposed 2019 work plan for the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee. This is Ms. Smithies and Ms. Smithers.
I'd like to introduce the chair, Pam Smithers, who's here tonight, and then Glenn Smith, who's the vice chair in the audience, and then Tobias Barr, who's the ATS liaison for Public Works for the committee.
So that was my first line, my introduction of myself. I want to just really quickly commend you that I don't see any plastic bottles on the table, so that's Good for you guys. And that's Tom Vance. He's not Glenn Smith. Tom Vance is here to support tonight. Anyway, I would like to thank the City Council for the chance to speak to you tonight. I am happy to report that we do have a full committee now. In particular, we want to thank you for your leadership in adopting environmental stewardship in your goal setting actions for 2018 and now also for 2019. Goal number 1, as I'm sure you all are quite aware, is a commitment, part of it is a commitment to environmental stewardship and public health. Our committee wants to help you attain this goal. Over the last few years, the City of St. Helena has taken a couple of steps to begin addressing environmental stewardship and public health, such as installing a green bicycling lane on Valley View as part of Safe Routes to School, installing a bike lane on Pope Street, expediting permitting for private home solar installations, passing a heavy truck ordinance, which limits truck traffic on residential streets, and just somewhat recently, the not spraying Roundup on city properties. Our committee wants to help you take many more steps toward your goal of environmental stewardship. Before we talk about our 2019 work plan, it's necessary to see where we have been, so I just passed around our committee's accomplishments for 2018. You can see that most of the year was working on what we call CADs. Affectionately, we call it CADs, Climate Action Directives. If you would allow me to explain this just a bit. One of the main tools used by governments to lessen their city's impact on the environment is the adoption of a climate action plan. Those are called CAPs. Climate action plans are meant to improve air quality, reduce black carbon emissions, improve water supplies, improve public health, quality of life, reduce fossil fuel reliance, and increase public awareness of climate change. The cities of Yountville and Calistoga have both adopted CAPs, and the County of Napa is in their final stages. Our committee, based on council direction from February 2018, last year, reviewed these other CAPs in detail and developed climate action directives for St. Helena, which could be incorporated into city planning and ordinances once you adopted them. These directives could serve, or would serve, as a sort of menu of environmental stewardship choices for the city of St. Helena until such time as a full CAP could be pursued and adopted. We understand that a climate action plan will be necessary for St. Helena to adopt once you adopt the new general plan. So there are some questions about whether or not to adopt our CADs or just wait for the full-fledged, legally obligated climate action plan. Let me just point out that the County of Napa has been working on their CAP for over 10 years when they finished their general plan. They started that process in 2008 and it's not finished yet. We aren't saying that it will take 10 years for St. Helena to adopt a CAP, but it is true that it is a very lengthy process, usually taking a year or two. We need your guidance tonight about whether or not to complete our work on our climate action directives. We have finished the sections on transportation and energy and delivered them to staff, as you can see on the accomplishments page. We welcome your input on the issue as well as on our 2019 work plan. We understand that we serve at the pleasure of the City Council and that our goals and work plan must be in alignment with your goals. Therefore, we welcome your guidance and direction tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any initial council comment?
Just that I would prefer not to wait. I think that this issue, we needed to take action already on climate-related matters, and so I'm in favor of moving forward with what we can do now.
Mr. Knudsen?
Can I pass for a second?
Sure. Any comment from Mr. Dory, Ms. Koberstein?
I would like to hear from staff with respect to how this would affect the work plan that's in place and the work plan that's anticipated going forward, and whether we have to make determinations that the directives are consistent with this general plan that we're going to soon hopefully pass. It seems like it's a little bit more legally complex than as described, and I don't know.
So that's an excellent question. Any action that the city tried to or chose to incorporate into our development review process or any other regulatory process must be consistent with the general plan. Planning staff obviously has been the lead on the general plan, and I have not been involved with the process to create the climate action directives, and I haven't reviewed them, so I don't have the ability to provide good feedback tonight. Other than to say that obviously any effort to incorporate these into our regulations would have to be found consistent with the general plan. And our general plan does identify the need for the city to adopt a climate action plan and sets out a 3-year timeline after adoption of the general plan.
So just to be clear, I do think that there is an urgency here in St. Helena, here in the world, and I agree with you that we need to move forward, but we have to be cognizant of the legal ramifications of the actions we take. So if there's some blending of those two principles, I'm all for moving forward in a reasonable way and encouraging this committee to continue to do further work. My preference, frankly, would be to, I think we're pretty close to getting this general plan adopted, so we're not that far out there. It's not like a year or two or 3 or 4 or 10. So that's encouraging, and then we need to transition right to this. I don't know enough about the directives, and I would have a sort of maybe a legal look at it to make sure it's consistent with what we're doing with the general plan. We have to just make sure the two are internally consistent. But if we can move it forward, I just don't know enough detail on how it affects development and the things we're doing in other areas. I would just have to have more information.
So staff could work with the climate action directives once adopted to begin to fold them into our process for development review, and then obviously they could serve as a foundational element to the adoption of the climate action plan, and we could involve the ATSC, Active Transportation Sustainability Committee, as a part of that overall process.
Is it the intent that the directives become incorporated into our municipal ordinance, our zoning code, or are they standalone?
Planning staff hasn't been involved at all with the creation of those.
I think what the intent was to do something instead of waiting 3 to 5 years or however long it was. That the idea, the people that were on council in February 2018 told our committee to do this work, and so we did this work. And so I guess what we're saying now is there's confusion as to what to do with this work that we did, and what we. There's 2 things on our work plan that we would specifically like your direction on or your comments. One, under the environmental sustainability, says complete climate action directives work, because we did transportation and we did energy. And what we have not done, which most CAPs have something on water and wastewater, we don't want to do that work if it's not going to be used, because we spent most of last year on energy and transportation. So if you could give us direction tonight on that, at least, the water and the wastewater, and then as a kind of a compromise or a sort of a how about this kind of idea, what our group came up with, I don't know if you happen to read this list, but one of them is explore 1 or more climate action directives for implementation in conjunction with city staff. So we understand staff's busy. We're not trying to supplant. I'm just saying that you told us to do it. We did it. What do you want us to do now? Should we keep doing water and wastewater or not? Because we don't, like anybody, you don't want to do things for nothing. And so, we thought maybe we could pick out a few climate action directives to work on with staff. But we need you to say that's okay, because staff has other things to do, or not just that, but this general plan, which legally obligates the city to do a cap, is being focused on. Once that's done, they'll turn to a cap. They'll hire a consultant. A consultant will do this, a cap. So, maybe a compromise would be to say, hey, why don't we we know we've got to do it. Let's hire them now. Let's get going on this cap right now. Why are we waiting until the end of the general plan when we know we have to do it anyway? There's nothing that prevents you from starting the cap now, except perhaps money. So maybe it could go into your budget for next year, start the process then. But in any event, tonight, if you could give us direction on whether you want us to complete the directives, water and wastewater A, and whether or not, and any of the other things on this list for that matter, or if you have other things you want us to do, we're open. You know, we're just trying to save the world here. Haha. But the other, you know, exploring one or more climate action directives, we need to know, and staff needs to know, if you want us to do that. We serve at your pleasure, so you need to tell us what you want us to do. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. Could you elaborate for people here and people listening, like substantively, what do some of these directives go towards or require? You know, maybe talk about transportation, or what kind of things would be coming in that we don't have now?
Transportation is kind of an easy one. A lot of it has to do with active transportation. So it's creating an environment that people want to walk and bike in our town, which we do not currently have. It's, you know, when the roads get done, we work with staff, or staff, you know, implements the bike plan, the county bike plan. So if there's a class 2 road and you're going to pave it, then you're going to make class 2 improvements there. That kind of thing is kind of overarching and fairly simple. Some other little things are like promoting the bus. There's a bus that very few people know about in our town that'll come and pick you up. And if we can get more and more people on that bus, it'll be kind of, you know, a nice thing all the way around instead of single car trips. I mean, I think there's, Tom, help me, there's probably 20 or 25 actions. Some of them are very easy. Mm-hmm. Some of them are, you know, have to do with road maintenance. So that's transportation. The other one was energy, and a lot of the energy has to do with buildings. So requiring new buildings to be built in certain ways, to require, you know, so that you can't build a house in Salem with lights lighting up your palm trees anymore. So that you can't, you know, little things like that, but that requires, you know, ordinance, you know, so that's the energy part of it mostly, right, Noah? It's mostly about buildings, the energy part.
In many ways, it complements the Cal Green checklist that's already in play, but it's reinforced at the local level. So that's how I kind of looked at it when they started doing this last year, is that it's very similar to the Cal Green. We're just reinforcing what's already required by the state, but getting down to our local requirements.
I want to jump in just for a second here. Mr. Prestwich, you know, in discussing what we're discussing here, and Mr. Hausch as well, you can, I get the urgency, I think, of looking at climate issues, moving forward on things. When we think about what our current work plan and what we're already dealing with, is there a way to think about integrating a few things so we get moving without overstraining our system? That's where I want to go, and make sure that, as you say, if you're doing the work, it's going to be used, but we lay out how it comes into the system so it doesn't disrupt the, you know, the current capacity of what we're dealing with. And I'm wondering if Mr. Prestwich has any ideas or thoughts, or Mr. Hausch, about how we can pick and choose a few items, even if we can't figure it out tonight. If we can think about it over the next week or two, what items might integrate more easily, and we start with those. That's just a question. Is that, I'm just wondering where we are in terms of our capacity.
I'll take a stab at that. Well, I'm looking back at the January 8th, 2018 staff report. I'm sorry, January 9th, 2018 staff report. And the purpose of bringing work plans to the one of the observations I had when I arrived is that it appeared that our committee and our commission, the Parks and Rec Commission and this committee, were not necessarily aligned with the council. And so it was my interest to make sure that the work they were involved in was meaningful, and that there would be synergies between their interests and their passions and what they were noticing as important, and an alignment with our city work plan, and that the council's mission was consistent with the committee and the commissions. And so last year we brought this to the council. This, I know we're talking sort of specifically about one of several items that are on their work plan, and they had 8 different bullet points last year, probably a few more this year. And in the specific case of climate action planning, last year the direction was to explore the feasibility of creating a climate action plan. So this is an advisory body, just as the Parks and Rec Commission is an advisory body to you. And I think there is some concern on the available staff resources related to implementing a directive now, as opposed to finishing up the general plan, and then frankly what's coming after that are a few more initiatives for the planning department. I do think that there can be a lot of work done on thinking through water and wastewater issues and teeing up some of that work for subsequent work by the staff. So I do think that there's value in the focus that they want. I'm not confident that we have the capacity at the moment to begin to legally analyze, and staff and then legal resources to actually implement right away. But it would be meaningful work that would contribute to us being prepared to move forward on climate action planning later. I'll stop there, and maybe Noah has some thoughts.
The only other thing I would add, and again, I'm not familiar with these, so I don't have specific responses, but the council has already identified, and the general plan also identifies the need to conduct a comprehensive zoning code update in response to the new general plan. We're essentially having a restart with all of our policies citywide, and that will require the same process with the zoning code. And this seems like a perfect opportunity to start to look for some of the work that's been done by the ATSC and fold that into the zoning code update, which is occurring. So staff absolutely could prioritize, if directed by council, reviewing the ATSC work for opportunities to incorporate within the existing prioritized documents, and then also future opportunities as we work through the budget of next year.
That sounds pretty interesting to me, that if you become familiar, and as you said, don't want to overburden you with a whole new thing, but if you become familiar with these items and then see opportunity as we're working through the zoning codes to where these could slot in, that seems to me of great value. Also, we are looking at our water and wastewater, what we're doing here for the long term. So that to me seems also that work in that area could very easily come right back in. We have 2 engineering firms we're working with now on the water and wastewater sewer and water master plan. So that type of work I do think is also consistent.
Yeah, just to answer Mary's question, when we started out with this process, we thought that what we would use was the cap from Napa and the cap from Calistoga. So the things that are in the directive are what's in those caps, but tailored to St. Helena. And the idea was to kind of to try to give staff some information when they get ready to incorporate the cap into the general plan on the specific areas, and almost, for example, a scope of work for the consultant that may come in and do the work for you, where our document would provide some St. Helena aspects to a cap. And then we decided that it's not a cap, and we changed it to a CAD because it's not a cap. And then, as Pam's pointed out, what are we going to do with this thing? And our main goal is to try to get it in front of council, let you guys and gals know what we're doing, so that then you can give us some direction. And I understand it has to, whatever we do has to be in concert with the plan. So we're just looking for direction this evening.
Anna, did you have a?
I have one more kind of follow-up or final thing. Maybe there's 3 things that come to my mind. One would be to decide that you're going to start a cap as soon as possible. Don't wait for your general plan. Put that in your next year's budget. We're going to start it. We know we're going to have to. Why are we dragging our feet? You might as well do it sooner rather than later, for the children of the world and ourselves included. Number 2, when we make financial decisions, like we've been working on this all last year, and yet when we decide to buy new cars, we're buying gasoline, internal combustion engine cars, because they're a bit cheaper the loan payment is cheaper, but then there's going to be gas. I mean, the financial review of these things, I don't know if it's, I don't know, I didn't look, but electric vehicles are cheaper over the long haul, yet we're buying internal combustion. So I'm only just bringing that one idea up. It's not about you, April, but I'm just saying that this, if you could, as a city, adopt the idea that so your staff knows it's not exactly the bottom line we want here. We maybe want to pay more now so that we are in line and we are, being sustainable. If that's really one of your goals, that'd be number 2. And number 3 suggestion would be to put one of us, maybe Tom or one of us, when you get your committee together to start building your buildings, one of the ideas about buildings is that they need to be built sustainably, whether that's solar panels on the roof, the design itself, insulation, bike racks, EV charging stations, that someone on our committee participates and kind of helps that, become part of these new buildings that you're all planning to build. So those are 3 concrete things that I think our committee would be super pleased if you did those things, just for your consideration.
Anna, did you have a comment, and then David?
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up the group that I've been meeting with, Supervisor Wag Connect and the elected officials from each of the cities on climate change, trying to figure out what can we do together to take real action. And we're going to have another 3 meetings scheduled in the next 3 weeks. And I think that there's going to be the next step is trying to figure out, knowing that the smaller cities don't have the staff to address this, and we need to address it. How, is there a way that we can share somebody, and it will be opened up to also having the community, which I see now as you guys, be involved for us? How do we share ideas? How do we make sure that when we're making these decisions that we're doing it through the lens of climate change and sustainability?
And if I may just say, Calistoga adopted their plan 5 years ago. 2014, April 2014. Napa County's working on theirs. It's been vetted like for 10 years. So there's like hundreds of pages. We poured through that, and we poured through the Calistoga plan as well. Yountville also has one. So the good news about being the last guy is that you're not creating the wheel. We virtually just took their plans. Tobias got a Word document from Calistoga, and we literally started with their Word document and edited it for saying it. So I'm just trying to say, don't feel like, you've got to climb a mountain here. I don't think it's going to be as hard as you might think. Just for your consideration.
And Mr. Knudsen? Oh, Mr. Doring.
No, go ahead.
So, I think this is incredibly important work, and I think it sort of addresses who we are as a community and who we would like to be. And so I love the thoughts that Chairperson Smithers talked about, that we work to have the city be, in the decisions that we make internally, do things that are consistent with our desires, right? And it might cost a little bit in the short term, but better for us in the long term. And then secondly is that if I love the idea of the effort that's been done, that's sort of piecemeal breaking pieces off and then feeding it back to us. I think it's behooves us now to try and incorporate these things as elements come in front of us, the zoning, building requirements, all those sorts of things as they come in front of us. And I just don't want to have a chairperson say, we don't want to work for nothing, because the work is incredibly important. And I hope that we, sort of regardless, taking care of staff time, I'd like to get this sort of put into our brains in a really strong way, so that we're incorporating these elements and that the work continues and that the committee feels like it's doing good work and that we're taking their output and bringing that into input. So I don't really necessarily have any further thoughts about making sure that that's so, but I don't think it's necessarily about having using staff time or not using staff time. I sort of feel like it's making sure that this is sort of part of our decision-making process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that does make sense. And if we think about how we do it, if we talk about input, so it's not an avalanche that upsets the current projects, the way we're doing things, but how does it start to implement itself in a way that, as we spoke about, it kind of slots in? And I think we have to be careful and considerate and yet move forward. This is where I believe we need to go, but wanting to do it in a practical way so that we don't upset the progress we're already making. Do you have any thoughts, Mr. Doring?
Well, look, we have a 2-page staff report that it's just in a sort of an outline form. There's no question that the committee is doing a lot of good work. What I don't want to do is oversell promises and say, oh yeah, go ahead and go down this path, and then have it vetted, and then we decide, oh, well, we're not really going to use that because we're taking this option. I don't think that's fair to the committee. The committee wants us accountability from us, and I want to give accountability. I could easily say, yeah, go forward with the wastewater. I think that, and water and wastewater part of it. I have no idea what that entails. There's not enough information to really make a fair decision that directs the committee. And so I'm offering a suggestion that we take 2 weeks and really vet this a little more carefully, look at some of the directives, get with the committee, figure out what parts can be incorporated, what our plan is with the cap, when we're going to finish our general plan. There's a lot of information here. I don't want to just start throwing time here. Our general plan has got to be first of all. It is a staff issue and a use of staff issue, but this is urgent too. And so I don't want to be in a situation where Pam Smithers comes up in 2 months from now and says, well, you guys told us, and now you're not using this, and I think that's a fair statement. I think we should be judged by that. And it is urgent. So you have these two competing issues. I make decisions based on fact-based decisions. And I've heard, I think it is urgent, and the committee makes a great point, but I don't see how that ties with staff. I don't see how it ties with the general plan. I don't have enough to know about what these directives look like. Can we wait a month and see how and work further on this, and then give a direction that's based on some real information? Either staff.
So we're publishing the agenda for 2 weeks from today on Friday. So I would appreciate a month versus, but there are I think there are a lot of opportunities, and just Erica and I have not been able to engage or haven't engaged on the work plan of the ATSC, our current work plan in the planning department, and to try to find out where those opportunities are. I'm certain they are there, and just so everybody understands what I think they're doing, which will be hugely beneficial, especially the discussion that Mr. Vance brought up, looking at through a St. Helena lens. A climate action plan essentially identifies the carbon footprint for the city, right, for St. Helena specifically, and it'll give you a quantified number for the carbon footprint of the community. And then each of these individual, what they're calling directives, gives you a quantified assumption about how much of that will be reduced. And then for a development project specifically, you give them a menu of 10 and they have to choose 5 or something along those lines. And then it also sets policy direction for city decisions, as was referenced by some of the council members. And so I don't think this will be a waste of their time at all. And I think the fact that they're taking the time to utilize existing information and then kind of look at it through a St. Helena lens will let the consultant step up that we do ultimately choose and essentially just do the quantifying part. We already will have the menu, and we'll just need to know the total carbon footprint and then what each of those items will kind of give us, and then we'll talk about how to implement it to get to where we're trying to go.
You have any comments?
I agree with what has been discussed. I would like to suggest that the committee maybe prioritize some of this for us themselves. It occurs to me some of these directives may be simple and could be right at the top of the list of things we could do that don't involve maybe modifying a lot of ordinances, or sort of, easy, medium, requires more work. And as far as the plan itself, I'd like to see some kind of schedule. Are we talking about, do this in 2 months, a year? a year and a half. What are you talking about? If there would be some sort of work plan so that then, the staff could tell us how we could absorb it into their normal work. I'm in favor of going ahead with the wastewater directives, even though I'm somewhat in the dark about them, because it does seem to me that we are going to be making policy decisions related to water and wastewater in the not too far distant future, and this could be very helpful information to us. So I'm okay with continuing this discussion, coming back maybe with a little more prioritization and what it involves on the city's part to move forward with some of these things. So we could do it in sort of an orderly fashion without disrupting things too much.
I've got
How about some of the other work plan items that they have listed in the staff report?
So
I think they're great, frankly.
Okay.
So
I especially the input into the buildings. I mean, this is another example of how a lot of things we're working on are related.
And roads. I mean, I was just reading about the white the roads in LA are being painted white and it is too expensive, but it's not just getting the carbon, it's now also heat. The planet's getting too hot. So I'm really interested when we are spending money, making sure that we're doing the best we can with the newest technology, thinking about the challenges that we're facing.
So one way to think about that, I've got a couple thoughts on that and some of the other items on the work plan. One question I want to ask is, can we, empower the committee, I'll just use the beekeeping program, to look into what that is if they were to create it, what would that structure look like, and, come to us and basically sort of, I use the word plug and play, like this is what it would be to start this out, and we've got the people organized to kind of do it so that it's not taking too much staff time. A lot of the setup is already done. So something like the beekeeping or with the recycling, we know that things have changed with the Chinese not buying the recyclables as they used to. What can we do here? And if the committee can actually figure out a way to implement a program and just sort of design the program and bring it to us to look at, say, oh, okay, that looks great. But so it's not just advising us, but also helping create the program that goes into real action. So that's just one thing I'm wondering if the committee can do that. And then I think the kind of the looking ahead where if we see an opportunity on a vehicle to try something different, or if there's an opportunity to implement some solar somewhere, if the committee can be, we're trying to get our agendas out earlier now and look at things ahead. So when we see something like, oh, did you think of, it's hard, we don't want to get 6,000 opinions on something when we're trying to make a decision, but if the committee has some ability to look at what we're doing and say, oh, okay, here's an option, as you're saying, a technology we haven't thought of, but somebody sees it, can it be implemented? So I guess thinking that way is that can the committee have some stuff that they're doing physically, as well as just creating the, not just, but as well as creating the documents. Am I making any sense? I'm just thinking.
You're talking about them actually implementing something.
Yeah, I'm talking about if they can think of something that they can implement and design what it is and then bring it to us and then we say, that looks great. And then they can go forward. I don't know if that's the ability or the role of the committee. Sorry if that was. Okay, yeah, okay.
Well, I can say that one of our goals is to come to you quarterly. So rather than twice a year. So then that way you can correct us. So we take a month or two and we look at beekeeping collectives or whatever. And then we come to you and say, this is what we're thinking, or this is, we'd like to be included in this decision. Like we were talking about the new downtown sidewalks. You know, and my first thing comes to mind, you sit at Model Bakery and no one uses those recycling and garbage cans correctly. Those have got to be replaced with something that's more effective. So that kind of thing, like having, you know, keeping in your mind, staff and you guys, that there are people that are willing to put their time in, you know, and can research things. And Tom did a lot of research on the Roundup thing. And I mean, most of us, well, we're not all retired. We have 2 new people that are, you know, not, but we're willing to do that, and then we can come and say, this is what we want to do, yay or nay. You know, I mean, what we want to do is not create problems. We want to help you. We want to help you with your number one goal, or it's part of your number one goal, environmental stewardship. So if you're serious about that, we're here to help you, and we will do whatever you want us to do. We don't have.
Okay. So, thank you. Okay, so I think where we're at is that we're going to come back in a month after we have time to everybody to look at these and think about how this can integrate. Is this where we're at?
Yeah, I kind of think of it as the way we approached the downtown economic strategy. We tried to sort things into things that could be accomplished like in the next 3 months, things that were more, you know, 6 to 9 months or real long term, so that we could flesh out the information here and have it be more of a kind of staged work program. That would be real helpful.
Okay, so if that's, I think we've got to move on to other. Does that give us enough to? Sorry. I need to come up to the microphone, Tom. Sorry.
Their own risk.
I think they should.
Thank you for all of this.
Yes.
This conversation. Do we have approval to go ahead and finish the last element of the CAD, which is the water and wastewater?
I think so.
I think you should.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're just trying to cover all our bets.
So we'll move forward and then be back in a month. And if the committee also thinks about, and I think this is a good way, how do we stage it? How do we have our short, medium, and long-term goals? Thank you very much for being here and all the work you're doing. It's appreciated. It is not for nothing. It is appreciated. And we're getting there. Okay, so now we're going to go to discussion and direction, item 11.6, discussion and direction to the Parks and Recreation Commission and city staff on the proposed 2019 work plan for the Parks and Recreation Commission. And we'll be hearing from Mr. Pitchley.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm here on behalf of our Parks and Recreation Commission Chair, Matt Demchuk. And as most of you are aware, the 5-member Parks and Recreation Commission acts in an advisory capacity to the City Council and Recreation Director, myself, in matters pertaining to policies, development of parks and recreation areas, facilities, programs, and services. Myself, along with Council Member Knudsen, who's our council liaison, worked with the Commission to develop their 2019 proposed work plan. And it was emphasized that it was important that the plan line up with council goals and objectives. The proposed 2019 Parks and Recreation Commission work plan was developed and approved at the Commission's February 25th, 2019 meeting. It includes the following park improvements: Wapo Park, to add shade and other amenities in the dog park area to improve the condition of the facility and the user experience. For Crane Park, it includes skate park makeover in advance of the 10-year anniversary that we'll be having on October 5th, a new play area fencing, Little League upgrades of infrastructure for storm drain and sewer connections, for a new snack bar and restrooms funded by the St. Helena Little League. Over at Jacob Miley Park, it would be to renovate the turf area. This would include replacement of existing irrigation, improved drainage, and installation of new turf. And for Baldwin Park, it would include the repair of fences along the perimeter of the park and improve the walking path through the park. There is no fiscal impact to the city related to approving to approving a work plan for the Parks and Recreation Commission. The desired improvements will be required to be incorporated into the city's future capital improvement plan for civic improvements and coordinated with the Public Works Department. While the commission discussed with each other and with staff and recommends those projects that it feels are most needed in the community, it will be the responsibility of staff to do the work to implement any council adopted work items. And that concludes my report.
Andre, sorry, Recreation Director Pitchley, I think this is great. I would also add, we just haven't gotten, from a sequencing perspective, and also that we didn't have our meeting this past month, that we will be, or that the committee will be looking at accessible open space and walking trails and other trails as a subcommittee of the committee to then come back and present that to the Parks and Rec Committee to then present back to the council, which, as you all know, is something that I'm very excited about, and I hope hopefully the committee shares my enthusiasm as well. That's it.
Is there any other initial comment?
How does that work with the work of the committee we just heard from, who's working on pedestrian improvements and things like that? I mean, are those being coordinated, or you consider this a whole separate idea?
It's been suggested that we all coordinate with the Active Transportation Committee, but to date, no coordination has occurred.
And if I may, we have discussed setting up a joint commission committee meeting to discuss these items.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make more work. I think it's a very important thing. I think bicycles are important, but also just getting out there and walking around the community, and this idea of creating connected paths is really important. I'm just trying to focus who's doing the work. But,
no, to me, it makes sense that the two would come together to discuss those items.
You also have resources, because I know the two women that just got on, that's also a passion of theirs. So they could want to be involved. You have to ask them.
I'm going to open it for public comment. If there's any comment from the public. Okay, I'll close the public comment. I have a question on, so park improvements, and these are suggested and they were approved. Does it come before us at a certain point to ask for funding? Is there an implementation thought to this? What would be the next step if we have things that need to get done?
Well, the next step would be for the council to adopt these, and for staff to then work with our finance director, our city manager, with Public Works. It's going to be a multi-discipline approach to try and implement these projects and to make some progress.
How do we properly do that outside the context of all of the other budget priorities that we have? Where, in a sense, you're getting sort of a jump. There's going to be, during the budget process, there's all kinds of different things that we have to figure out what is best, where are our resources. I think this is a great plan, and I think you should go forward, but with a proviso, it's more of go forward to explore each one of these plans, get various alternatives, try to check out what the funding is, see what other cities are doing to that extent. But then I also feel a little cautious because it's like, oh, we went this far, but it didn't make the budget because we had a pressing budget issue. And that's kind of, the two, this one and the prior one are really process issues for me. Not that these are not urgent. They're important for our community, but I'm a little taken aback that we're doing this now, and maybe that's just the way it works, but that's my concern.
Vice Mayor Doring, I think you're absolutely right about that. In a way, they're sort of, from the community, the committee has, to my mind, come up with sort of areas of most need, right? And then when you have this sort of ranked cost and sort of ranked necessity, then I think it gets fed back into the budgeting process. And it's funny, the parks are so important. I mean, recreation sort of is with the staff is sort of managed on its own. It's really the parks and capital improvements where there's real questions about, and they've been the poor stepsister of the town maybe for the last 10 years or so. And so then the question is, how do you bring them up so that they are actually maintainable? You're right. This is sort of a wish list.
Let me ask it in a different way. Is there an estimate that has been put to all of these? You take them all and go, okay, here's maybe a lower version, a medium version, and the Cadillac version, the Mercedes version. At least the general. Is it 250,000? Is it 50,000? Is it $500,000? If I had some context, I'd be more comfortable. Kind of going, oh, I can see, because I mean, I'm looking at the budget and seeing a lot of needs that we have, and I think you go through budget processes enough times, you get the surprises, and you go, oh gosh, like failed pipes throughout our city. So that's what I'm concerned about.
And if I may respond, first off, there are no dollars associated with these projects. We had a discussion during the process of, well, it was a side item, an additional item, which was addressing the Hunts Grove, and what could we do to make improvements there, to make it publicly accessible. And the commission's feeling was that, well, we're not really taking care of what we have right now. It's really hard for us because we don't have the staff and we lack the resources. There's a lot of work to do. Why would we add one more park to a system that is old and tired and needs a lot of work? So I think what Councilmember Knudsen's saying is absolutely correct. These are just things that the commission has identified as things that just need help, but the whole system needs help.
I just want to let you know I recognize that these are the essentials, the bare essentials. These are not like extras. I fully understand that.
I think this is part of our remodel. When we were talking about that earlier with all of our buildings, are just what makes our city feel really great. And when we hear about parks being old and tired and not having the maintenance or not investing in them, I would like to see this be a part of that process.
I'm ready to give you the direction to move forward, but you can see how my brain is working.
Absolutely.
So a month from now or 2 months from now, it's going to get shaken out. But yeah, I think these things are essential. These are pretty basic. It's kind of embarrassment that some of these things are even on here, but it is. So yeah, you have my support. I just want to have that sort of, if it's $500,000, that's going to be different than 50,000 for me. So.
Right.
And when we come back at budget time, or when we come back with these, having options to look at and sort of what it looks like, I think that's a good next step where we can approve the movement forward, and then what comes back is we start to see and maybe have some options about where we're at, so there's some flexibility when we're juggling the budget. But this is critical. This is making sure that we're putting the attention where it needs to go. As we saw earlier, we have enthusiasm for people who want to get involved with the parks, and whatever we can do to support that and bring the community out into the parks and make it safer, make it work better. I think we're motivated to do that. I think I opened it. Yeah.
Yeah, with us tonight is Donna Heinz, and she's the vice chair of our commission.
I guess my thought from being on this committee is it is hard to see the condition of the parks, and we just really do want to see improvement. We think the whole community would enjoy and benefit from improvement in these parks, both in beauty and functionality.
Thank you.
I'm just a little confused about the budget process. Is it the intention that all of these projects are going to come before us in this year's budget process, or are the numbers not that fleshed out yet?
So the way I'd like to look at this, and I think it's some of the comments that Andre provided regarding the coordination with the Public Works Department, we can give educated guesses to some of this, and we do know that we have a fairly large balance of park impact fees that are available as a source of funding for these. Some of these are going to require some public engagement, some engineering. we have a budget workshop planned for May 9th, and what we'll be able to do is put some of these together for you and allow you to do some refined thinking about prioritization. There's probably some value in receiving, for example, with WAPO Park, recommendations this year as opposed to necessarily a formal project. So perhaps the thinking can be, what are the shade and recommended locations for these amenities within WAPO Park, and then to begin to build that into a plan longer term. With Crane Park, the skate park is a very interesting opportunity because we're approaching the 10-year anniversary. I think a project is relatively simple, and there's probably some volunteer assistance out there with a little bit of landscape architecture that can go a long way towards a project like that. And we know that there's interest on the Little League's part to work on some projects, but we know and recognize that there's some coordination that will happen with city utilities, and from a timing standpoint, that project may not get built this year, but we know that we can make some progress on the planning side. Miley Park, frankly, I think there is probably some engineering analysis that's going to be needed here that we will need to contract for, which would potentially be a cost that we would need to incorporate into the current year budget or postpone to next year. And then Baldwin Park, there are some relatively easy fixes out there. That one's actually pretty straightforward.
Okay, do we feel comfortable moving forward? I would entertain a motion to do so. Do we need to? Or are we just discussing here?
I think we discussed.
Okay, very good.
All
right. Thank you very much, and we appreciate the work, and I know that we're on the right track to getting things up to where they need to be, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And please thank the commission, too. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on now to item 11.7, and this is discussion and direction regarding an appeal to reverse back billing of sewer-based fees for Caroline, excuse me, Davis, in the amount of $3,552.68. Thank you. And this is April Mitz.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank Caroline and also Nash, who's here for the next item for waiting around for the two appeals. So the first appeal in front of you is a discussion and direction regarding an appeal to reverse back billing of sewer-based fees. So periodically, the Finance Department, we do request updated application information to verify accuracy for our billing purposes. In October of 2018, staff did receive an updated application for 1294 Grayson, which listed the property as multifamily. The city's utility billing system did have it incorrectly put in as a single family, and as a result, we had been billing the sewer base rate incorrectly, so not the usage rate, just the base rate. Upon discovery of the error, the base rate was corrected in the system effective November 2018, and the customer was back billed for the difference between the sewer base fee charged and the correct sewer base fee. And so the back billing amount is $3,552.68. Back billing was done for a period of 3 years, which does comply with statute of limitations, and it is consistent with other back billings the city has done in regards to the water and wastewater accounts. Notification and supporting documentation was sent to the property owner on November 1st, 2018, and it's also as an attachment. Upon the receipt of notification, Caroline Davis, I'm not going to attempt the other one, contacted city staff regarding the back billing just to answer, get some questions answered. And then she did file an appeal for the city requesting a waiver of the back billed amount for $3,552.68. There was an initial difference in the back billing amount that we originally did and then what the appeal is, and that was because we did have a calculation error that we corrected on our end. We did research how the misclassification had occurred, and we did find limited information. There's only a few attachments to the account, so we really don't know where it happened on our end, but it definitely was something that happened on our end. It is also unknown how long the account had been serving multifamilies. The St. Helena Municipal Code does state that sewer charges imposed that owners of property shall pay to the city a charge based on their user categories for the connection of the property to the public sewer system, and so that is why we did the back billing. We're bringing this appeal to City Council, and I do have Caroline here that will also speak to you regarding the appeal process. The fiscal impact is just dependent on City Council direction tonight. If the appeal is denied, there'll be no fiscal impact, and they would be responsible for the back billing amount. And we do also offer hardship agreements, as we do for any of the other back billing scenarios. If the City Council wishes to grant all or a portion of the appeal, there'll be a decrease in sewer revenues for up to the dollar amount. So I'd like to ask Caroline to come up and speak to City Council, and then we can answer any questions.
So my name is Caroline Shusted. I'm Davis, is my married name. Anyway, my husband and I have owned a triplex that's literally just to the north here on the other side of the Performing Arts on Grayson. It's a triplex that was, I think it was built in probably 1979. So it's, for all intents and purposes, always been a triplex. It's always been multifamily. It's, speaking to Noah about a week ago, it's zoned high density. So the attachment in there, I recognized the name. It was, I think, Dave Hoyt, the previous owner, is that one that little attachment put the address. I don't know how that got into the file, but anyway, so, I mean, any accounting is going to show it as a triplex. So when we purchased the property, we would have no reason to believe that what we were billed for sewer, and we've passed on the sewer and water fees to our tenants in part, and then we keep the rents a little bit lower as a result. So I can't go back to my tenants there. It wouldn't be appropriate to back charge them for that. So I'm just asking for consideration from the city for those back billed amounts. We certainly recognize that now the error's been found. It has to be paid going forward. So that's all we're asking for, is consideration.
Thank you. And how long have you lived or owned the building?
We don't live up here, unfortunately. Someday, maybe, when we retire, but right now we're working stiffs. About 4.5 years.
You've owned the property for 4.5 years?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
I have another question. Are your tenants, over the 3 years of the proposed back billing, have your tenants remained the same, or have they been different tenants in that
The
time?
largest of the units have been in there well before we purchased the property. The other are, I think one recently changed. I'm not sure, it may even be a teacher that's in one of the units. And then the other tenant has been there probably 2 years.
So one, the 3 years, 1, 2 years, and one recently?
Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Toe, any thoughts?
Public comment? I mean,
I can, well, if there's no initial council comment, I can open the public comment. Seeing none, we'll close it. Any other thoughts? Mr. Doring, Ms. Chateau, Ms. Koberstein?
You know, it's tough. I'm sorry, I want to, may I ask a question, Ms. Mitz, about our,
yes.
You know, so, and I'm sorry I didn't ask this ahead of time. You know, this was sort of an accident that we uncovered this, right? And you could sort of expect out there in this world that there'd be bills that are accidentally too high and some bills that are accidentally too low. Do you have a sense of how accurate our billing is? I mean, this was a random uncovering, right?
Yes, this was a random uncovering, as you stated. I feel that our billing is accurate to a certain degree of error. When I first arrived about 4.5 years ago, we did a complete audit of all of our water and sewer accounts, and I'd say we caught probably 95 to 96% of the errors that we had. The council members that have been here for a while, actually, Mr. Doring, he experienced some of the other appeals that were brought before City Council, but I believe it was my second year here. We brought in about $130,000, $140,000 in additional revenues that we back billed for 3 years because of inconsistencies prior to the current management team, there was a lot of lack of communication in between departments, and we've really worked on improving that to try to catch things. And this was one that unfortunately fell through the cracks, and that's why we periodically do those updates so we can catch errors like this. And it was completely how we had it in our system was an error.
And is it typically, it sounds like most of them are lower, like of that 95, 96% that you believe you caught 4.5 years ago, were most of those underbilled? Is that correct?
Correct. Every single one of them was
Every
underbilled.
single one.
We did not have any overbilling. It was all underbilling.
And did we have a policy at that time for what we required for the 3-year catch-up that we applied consistently across everyone?
That was based on feedback that we had consulted with the attorneys on what the statute of limitations was, and that was what myself and as well as the city manager at the time, and then also the city attorney felt was appropriate for the back billing.
And so everyone was billed 3 years in arrears.
If it was pertinent, the one appeal that did come to city council was for Gott's Roadside, and their back billing was only 1.5 years because that correlated with the date that they connected into the city sewer system.
Interesting. And did we have anyone that had a 3-year back bill that was a multifamily unit in this sort of situation where, for example, it's a they pass through their costs, and in this case, once again, the money's already gone. Did we have any that were multi-units?
I would have to go back and check the records. Offhand, I can't recall if anyone.
I'm really sorry I didn't ask this ahead of time.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I actually don't know if it was multifamily. I know we did have single family. We obviously had some businesses as well, but I don't recall specifically if there's any multifamily.
Thank you.
There's one thing that I've noticed here that I can't quite figure out the reason for, which is that the amount underbilled has increased quite a bit after the rates were changed. And I don't quite understand that, because I thought that the wastewater rates that we adopted were to implement what we previously had. The first go around, there was a whole new wastewater rate structure, and as a result of the ad hoc committee, it was no, go back to what we had. And I'm seeing, I don't know if that's the reason, but it seems to be the sewer base rate here that is causing. Do you have an answer for this?
I do have an answer for that. It is due to the size of the meter. So for most residential families, they have a 5/8 inch meter or 1 inch meter, and that's where the lower costs are. When we revisited the rates and we changed it over back to meter size, they have a larger meter than residential's because it does serve multifamilies. So the reason, the difference, what we charged was 56. And that's for single-family residential, which would be on a 1 inch meter, which is what we had in the system, where the base rate for multifamily, I believe it's a 2 inch, I'll have to go back and check the rates, is $194. So the base rates are significantly higher for the larger meters for wastewater. I'm sorry, for water.
It's wonderful having these iPads here, because I pulled up our wastewater rate schedule, and it doesn't appear to me that that's the way it is in the rates. And I would just ask you to maybe check this, but it says that the wastewater rate schedule that we were proposing for residential, the charge per unit, it shows a single family flat monthly charge per unit, and then a use charge per 100 cubic foot for single family, multifamily, mobile homes. So does that mean that that multifamily is being charged based on meter size under the non-residential category? I mean, I don't expect you to have an answer for this right on the spot, but
I actually do. I just need to find the right sheet on here. So when you're looking at the proposed, you're looking at the proposed 5-year rate schedule, correct, from the Prop 218?
Yeah.
So the use charge per HCF does apply to single-family, multifamily, mobile homes, so that the use charge didn't change at all.
Mm-hmm.
For residential, you do see the single-family flat month charge per unit, and then right underneath it where it says non-residential, there's a footnote for 1, and 1 says it includes multifamily and mobile homes.
I gotcha. Okay.
Are we ready for the discussion portion of our discussion?
I'm ready.
Okay. I feel like the one question I asked, because I am all sort of for equality in front of the law, right? And if we've treated prior multifamily, I'd like to treat the existing applicant, or what's the right term?
Appellant.
Appellant. Like we've treated anyone else if there have been other multifamily, right? It would seem to me like if we did this 4 years ago, we should do exactly what we did for everybody else, or not. I mean, if that's the policy, then let's be consistent, because it could have been captured 4.5 years ago. This just accidentally was not. I don't feel like I haven't. I'll speak for myself. I feel like I don't have enough information to be fair. Sort of like how we treated the potentially the problem over at Trevina.
Is there information from 3 years ago?
I would have to go back to our records and look. I mean, we do have the files on everything, so we can easily tell, but I don't have it readily available.
What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Doring?
I'm not inclined to accept the appeal.
Regardless of the information.
Well, I accept your statement that we should be fair to all of the appellants. I don't know if there are other past. I don't have a recollection of any past multifamily situations where we did do that. I'm not sure if that would make a difference to me. I think it's a case by case, depends on the facts, depends on what's going on. I think that I get this general sense of, it would be not right to pass this on back to the tenants. And of course you have different tenants with different time frames. But at the same time, they've enjoyed the benefit of not having those fees paid for. It goes back a ways. Tenants have gone, so we can't go. 3 years is the statute of limitations. I think I would recommend that, yes, it would be difficult, but certainly the landlord could spread this out over time to make it palatable for the tenants. $25 a month until it goes away. And they're going to have to figure out how they pass that on.
And we can spread it out over time as well.
Well, we need. I think. Certainly we can do that. I mean, but I'm there are different ways of getting to that, but I don't see anything, frankly, that justifies accepting the appeal. I mean, that's my opinion.
Well, I went into it thinking, why would we want to be in the business of penalizing our citizens for our mistakes? I didn't understand there was this history. So I was just thinking this was our mistake, so why would we go back and expect them to pay? It was new information today to start thinking that there's a history of it. So I too like thinking about what specifically has been done in the past.
I'd like to ask you a question about your leases. Do you even have the right to go back to your tenants and ask them? I mean, sometimes people that just pay a flat amount a month for water. Sometimes you have a right to true up if it doesn't work out. Do you even have that right?
Because there is only the 1 meter, the property manager had encouraged that the best way to do it was allocating based on either bedrooms or number of people, or so, the largest unit was a little bit more. So, I mean, yes, I suppose in the future, instead of raising the rent, I mean, you raise it, but for an amount to kind of recapture it. So, I mean, they're good tenants. We want to keep them. So I don't know what we do. I just felt that, I know I'm talking to April, if I recall correctly, that I don't think there have been a lot of appeals, and some of the appeals were very large amounts, and they weren't even contested. So I just felt it was worth coming down here to at least appeal to you all that, we bought the units assuming that it was correct, and we've paid it, and we understand now we've got to pay more. We would just love some consideration for that. But yes, I mean, we could certainly look at raising the rents a little bit, but it wouldn't be really to catch up because you've been here 3 years, but you've only been here 2 years. It might just be trying to get a little bit more out of it to kind of recapture that out of pocket.
Could I ask you to tell us what the range of the rents are in this building?
There's a 2-bedroom that is $1,895. The 3-bedroom, 2-bath is $2,300. So they're not insignificant, but for St. Helena, I think those are relatively affordable.
Yeah, I sort of suspected that. You know, we did deal with a building on Grayson in another context, and I think it is an area of more affordable housing in St. Helena, if there is such a thing, and at the moment. And I would hate to see this fall back on the tenants, frankly.
Well, I mean, if we raise it, it would be very small increments. I'd rather keep good tenants than deal with turnover.
What do you think, Mary?
This is a tough decision for me. It's not, to me, it's not a significant, huge amount of money when you're thinking about a 3-year period. It was our error. I don't know. I'd be in favor maybe of some hardship agreement to pay it off over time. I don't know. I'd like to hear some more from the rest of you.
Is there a thought, if it was our error of bringing down the cost some percentage? Is that some way of looking at it, or is that create a different problem?
No, I guess my problem more is, you know, what this building is and who the tenants are, and that this is, in that context, kind of a significant amount of money if it's going to fall back on the tenants, you know, who probably on their own might qualify for our care program, for all I know. Seems we've already spent probably $3,000 of time working on it.
Well, I come back to the sort of the fairness. We did this exercise 3 years ago. Somehow these guys slipped through the cracks. We charged everybody. Everybody paid. So should we treat these guys different? That's, to me, you know, if the police officer is there, that wrong example. If, you know, everyone should, if everyone's getting a ticket for X and someone doesn't get a ticket for X, that's wrong. Everybody should, you know, we should all be treated the same.
And that's what occurred 3 years ago, was that everybody was...
That is correct. We had one for sure, which was Gott's Roadside, and I can't remember if we had a second residential or not that appealed. Any appeals that were brought before City Council were denied. As far as the hardship agreements, what we offered for everybody who we did back billing is however far back we back billed, we offered a hardship agreement for that same time period. So for instance, in this case, since we back billed 3 years, we would offer a hardship agreement, just our standard of 36 months to pay it back, which would be an additional $98 a month on top of what their bill is. Just so you know, with their base rates, what the difference is right now, they were being charged $56, now they're being charged $194. So that would be in addition to the additional $138 that they're paying. And I did present 2 resolutions to City Council tonight for the consideration. The first resolution was to deny the appeal. And the second resolution was to offer all our partial, and we left it blank so we could fill in the dollar amounts based on City Council directive. So we did leave that option open for City Council.
So it's $98 more a month split between 3 residents. Is that correct?
That would be for a hardship for a 3-year agreement. For just the regular bill, which we already started doing the corrective billing effective November, it's been $138 a month more to the property owner.
So $138 more plus the $98?
Yeah, that $138 is already, we've we've changed the billing, we corrected it, so that's $138 more a month. For back billing, it would, if we extended it for a 3-year hardship, it would be $98 a month additionally for 36 months.
So it's a 70-something more per resident? Or for, am I? Okay, okay. So I'm getting a sense that the hardship agreement is probably where we're going to end up. I think Mr. Knudsen makes a pretty compelling argument that we need to be consistent with what's been done in the past. You know, I recognize that these are under market rate, and that's a consideration. And I do see that this is a substantial increase for your tenants. But I do think that in terms of consistency, I would be favoring Mr. Knudsen's point. So that being said, I would support a motion to deny the appeal. Unfortunately, I understand what you're saying.
And I just want to add, I recognize that the city made a mistake, but there's a fundamental part of me that says you don't get a windfall off of somebody's mistake. That to me is fundamental. So if my kid's walking down the street and finds a purse and it has $100 in it, it might have a license in it, it might have something in it. We know, well, that person made a mistake. They dropped their purse. I'm going to tell my kid to turn the purse into the purse. And, you have to correct it. You don't get the windfall from somebody's mistake. That's how I operate, and that's how I look at this. We made a mistake, and we own up to it, so there's two different things going on there. The concept of a windfall is not a precedent that I would ever want to set for our city.
Well, right, and I think if we look at it that we did make a mistake, we acknowledge we made the mistake and offer the hardship agreement as some sort of restitution, to me, doing that, knowing that we're being consistent with what happened in the past, that to me seems the path here. If that's...
What is the hardship again?
It would spread the cost over 3 years for the back billing. So it would add that to the bill.
And we don't charge interest for that. We divide by 36, right?
That is correct. We do not charge interest, and we already have that program and policy in place within finance.
So would somebody like to make that motion? I'm not seeing a lot of interest in making the motion.
What is the motion to deny the appeal but allow a payment with a 3-year hardship agreement?
The motion it would be just to deny the appeal. We already have the ability to do the hardship.
Oh, you already do have the ability?
Yes, the motion would be to deny the appeal.
Move to deny the appeal.
Do I hear a second?
Well, earlier I said I didn't have enough information, but I have enough information now since we know that 100% paid. So I second.
And we'll have the roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Doring.
Yes.
Councilor Knudsen.
Yes.
Chateau.
No.
Copperstein.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we are getting close to 9 o'clock. Is there a motion by the majority to move past 9 o'clock?
No. I'm kidding. I think we should finish the last item.
I will make that motion if necessary.
Second. Is that to 9:30?
Yes. That's to go to, it'll go to go past 9
Yeah.
p.m.
The mayor made that motion. I seconded.
Okay.
So this is 11:08, City Council discussion and direction of an appeal for a leak adjustment for Pizzeria Trevigne.
Do we need a roll call on that, or?
Mayor Ellsworth? Vice Mayor
Yeah.
Doring?
This is the extension of time.
To go beyond 9.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
The question is, do we need a roll call?
And I was just doing roll call.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Copperstein.
Yes.
Chateau.
Yes.
Knudsen.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to get on to 11.8, City Council discussion and direction of an appeal for a leak adjustment for Pizzeria Trevigne. This is April Mitz.
Yes, thank you very much. And also Nash Cognetti is here tonight as well to speak on behalf of Pizzeria Trevigne. So as was brought to City Council before, in September and October, Pizzeria Trevigne did experience a pretty significant water leak. The leak did result in a 2-month cumulative excess of approximately $20,000 of wastewater charges over the 3-year prior averages. So there's 2 charts that are included in the staff report. The first chart shows what the 3-year average is for those same months, and then the second chart shows what the actual billing was, so you can see the difference between what was actually billed versus what their 3-year consistent average was. And this does not affect the base rate, it just affects the usage rate. On December 17th, Pizzeria Trevigne did request a credit in the amount of $20,388 for the excess wastewater use over a 2-month cycle. That did spark discussion among City Council members to allow for or to revise the current leak adjustment policy to allow non-residential customers to qualify for leak adjustments. Based on the newly adopted policy, Pizzeria Trevigne is eligible for a water leak adjustment of $500, but is not eligible for wastewater adjustment because the water went directly into the city sewer system. Because of the amount requested, the request is being brought before City Council for consideration. The general fund would be responsible to cover any appeal amount granted. However, because we know that the water that went into the wastewater system was treated potable water, it could be justified possibly just reversing those particular units out as opposed to having the general fund cover the cost. Just as an FYI for council, that would be for council consideration. The fiscal impact would be cost to the city's general fund, and it is dependent on council direction. Credits can range from $500 if the appeal is denied completely, so they would just be, we can provide $500 based on the current policy, up to $20,376 if the City Council directs 100% credit for both water and wastewater. So staff is seeking City Council direction for an appeal for a leak adjustment. 2 resolutions have been provided, same with the last appeal. The first resolution is denying the appeal, and the second is granting an appeal with the dollar amount left blank to be completed based on City Council direction. And I'd also like to invite Nash up if he'd like to speak to this.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. When I stood up here back in January, I said it was the first time that I'd ever been to a City Council meeting in any city, and now I've had the opportunity to come to a few of them. So I just want to take a second and say thank you very much, because it's been a great opportunity for me to see city government work, and it's also been a learning lesson for me. So thank you very much for your time here past 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, and thank you for the education. I did just want to add one thing to what the finance director said, and that was the last time I had the opportunity to stand here, we kind of came to an agreement that we were not going to come to a resolution on that evening. So I took City Council's direction and Mr. Mayor's direction to not pay any future water bills. And so when I received the water bill, I contacted the City Finance Department and said, what should I do with this bill? And she said, we'll bring it up at the next City Council meeting. So just for an FYI, as we go into this discussion, I will let you know that I do have 2 outstanding water bills right now with the City of St. Helena, and the total for those 2 water bills is $4,559, which is our normal water usage, thankfully. But I did think that that was important for me to bring up in the context of this discussion, is that I do have an outstanding balance right now.
So can I just ask, the total, was that for the 2 water bills, the 4,000, or is that for each?
That was for the total of 2 water bills.
Okay.
That was for my water bill for the month of January and for the month of February.
Okay, and that's generally in that range, that
Exactly.
2,000 range? Okay.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, and if you need any refreshers or have any questions about the original appeal. Obviously, I'm not going anywhere. So.
I have a question.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm still curious about the sort of legal lease arrangement between you and the hotel, since this is a shared bathroom facility. And have you looked into that more? Are they partially responsible for this? Do you have any recourse there?
Unfortunately, no. It's a very cut and dry. I actually forwarded that section of our lease agreement to Mr. Presswich, and it's very cut and dry tenant agreement with the landlord that basically states that we are responsible for all repairs and maintenance on our section of the building. And because this pipe was technically from our water main into our building, it's our responsibility. So it's repairs and maintenance, but really what we're responsible there for is our water bill. The fixing of the pipe is not the issue here. It's the water that came in. Does that make sense?
Who's
Yeah,
fixing
I mean,
the pipe?
sometimes
We did.
You did.
And
Yes,
paid for it fully?
Yes, sir.
But so you're trying to distinguish between the fixing of the pipe and the water bill. Was the hotel did they participate in the fixing of the pipe?
No, it's all 100% our responsibility.
Wow.
Okay. That was a question I had, and I raised
Sorry.
that question at the last meeting. So, I'm inclined. Since our last meeting, we have created a fairly robust policy to govern this. We tried to separate your case from our policy. We didn't. Sometimes we kind of delve back into your case as we are creating our policy. I think you satisfy the terms of our policy. And I'm inclined to give or to support a fairly significant reduction on your bill. I'm not inclined to be talking to my fellow council members to do the whole thing, but I'd be inclined just to put it out there. I know we're moving quickly, but we're kind of all up to speed on this. It's a question of now we have a policy in place. I go through the checklist of the policy. It seems like you would qualify under the terms of the policy. The only question I had outstanding was, is somebody else liable? Can you go to somebody else to share the burden here, take a little burden off the city of St. Helena? Sounds like your answer, it doesn't sound like your answer is no to that point.
Yes, sir.
But, I'm willing to go to reduce it by half because I think that that's appropriate. Other council members may have other ideas.
I'm a little confused. 2 weeks ago when we did the policy, and I know it was back of the envelope, but we did a back of the envelope to say how much will the leak adjustment policy cost for a year. And the number we came up with was $20,000, if my memory serves me. I think so. That was the number for the entire city. So that it's sort of it's weird that this is a budget buster. Is the policy, did we not do I'm back to fairness, right? So the policy is the policy, but suddenly the policy's really expensive in this particular case. And this is one, and we'll get more. I know this was a weird piece, but am I pulling the $20,000 out of thin air? I mean,
Well, I think that would be the policy if we never heard any appeals and just allowed to happen what's allowed under the policy. Here we're talking about an appeal because there are special circumstances, which I think takes us out of that number we were given.
I would hope that this is an aberration and not something that's normal. The normal ones would go to staff. Hopefully they'll be under the $5,000 threshold. This one is, there are a lot of facts here that are unusual in terms of accessing, finding out, knowing where the leak is. I'm sympathetic to that for sure, because I think the owner of this restaurant has demonstrated fairly clearly with a lot of evidence and shown up for these meetings and made a good case. The reason I don't go full 20, I'm cognizant of our budget And so it's a number, it's a number. I think it's fair, but others could have a different idea whether it should be the full amount. But you're right. I think it's going to be hard to tell over a year's period of time. But I think that this one's sort of outside the normal.
Right. So
numbers
this is
that you're talking
such
about.
a weird confluence
In my
of
mind, it
events
is. In my
that
mind, it is.
it was not viewable, and so therefore it just sort of happened. Let's just go back to the numbers for one further second. How many water customers do we have? Ms. Mitz, was it
2,700 something?
I believe it's about 2,800 approximately.
2,800. So that means that each water customer, because money doesn't grow for free. So if we were to divide 10,000, for example, by 3,000, it means that we're all sort of contributing $3 to Pizzeria Trevina on average. Is that correct? Did I do the math right? $3.25.
I think another way of looking at it is that we're all contributing to an insurance policy as well, knowing that we will be sympathetic as a council if there's something that happens that outside of reasonable control.
That's what insurance is, right? It's against, we're all willing to pay insurance to guard against outlandish and expensive events that, for whatever reason. I just want to be cognizant of the numbers. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I tried to do some numbers too. I was trying to understand what our actual costs are, and thank you for April for walking me through it, because I kept thinking, is this $20,000? Is this really what we as a city are spending for this water? And I think that I finally got to a bit of an understanding. The part of what's different about this is that the water went straight, it was clean water that went straight back to wastewater, so we don't have to spend the money to clean it again. So to me, we're not, if April helped me if I'm not explaining that correctly.
With everything else.
Gotta be cleaned. It's part of the volume, but it's not, I don't know, it's diluting the bad effect of the rest of it by pouring clean water in, but you're right, in a sense, yeah. We can't separate it out when it gets to the plant and say we don't have to treat it.
Yeah.
But it's a very good point.
I hope it's treated.
But maybe with a little less chemicals.
So
chemical cost is small compared to the infrastructure, right? I don't know. Marginal cost versus fixed cost.
Mr. Doring's point, that this meets all our criteria, I'm there as well. Mr. Doring has put out the number of half. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I at least want to do that.
Okay.
It seems to me that Mr. Doring's sort of split the difference is probably seems fair, actually. It's a really weird circumstance. And I really wish that somehow the building owner that came up with this scheme, or the engineer, that there was some recourse there. Apparently there's not.
Is there, are we looking at a hardship agreement with this as well on the balance?
Pizzeria Trevina has actually paid it in full. So they paid, because they are set up for auto pay. And so he actually paid those two large billings in full. And so that was part of the council directive of not having to pay the additional bills until we had this settled. So what we would do is, based on council direction, if they are granting half, we would basically credit the account half, which would actually probably cover the 2 months of bills. And at that point, what we do is either issue a refund for the rest or leave it as a credit balance if that's what they, usually we leave it as a credit balance, but because of how significant it is, we would work with them to see whether they'd want a refund or not.
Ms. Koberstein, do you have any thoughts on an amount?
On an amount? No, but just following up on what Anna said, I mean, the same is sort of true of the water use. It was it was water that was coming in and not being used to wash your hands or do anything like that, and then just going right into this particular drain. So it's, both water and wastewater. That it was really used for no purpose that it was intended to be used for.
So does that give a reasoning for some additional percentage?
I think so. I'm not so sure that this is a totally unique case. I mean, we may face this in the future. So we have other older buildings. I think we have multiple people on, or had, on some meters in the downtown business area. It is something we would face again.
So you're saying that the 10,000 is reducing it by half is too generous, or not generous enough?
I'm saying we just should recognize that we will set out our reasoning here, and it could very well apply to another case that might show up.
Yeah, I look at each case factually, but yeah, we can adjust. A year from now, we go, well, this was a policy that needs some work because it's really not sustainable budget-wise, and I think we should revisit it. But you're never going to know. I think these circumstances are an aberration. I really do. This is a little different. And just in terms of the time it took to find the leak, and just, that's a long period of time. And I don't think that's going to happen. It could. But.
If it means anything, I've been in the restaurant business for 20 years, and nothing like this has ever come close to happening. So if you want to talk about an aberration, I guess that qualifies, yeah.
And I can confirm that this is the largest leak that we have seen today. So I can definitely confirm that. Even the pool leaks with the autofill was substantially less than this.
So the basic numbers are that the charges were roughly $23,000, which were paid. That bill was paid, and there's been about $4,600, which, per our direction, you did not pay, a bill outstanding.
Yes.
So that's where we are.
I could see it sliding up a bit from so just using my insurance example, if every ratepayer is paying insurance of $5, it's part of, you have medical insurance, you have life insurance. It turns out we have water insurance. So this is one of those bigger payouts that you hope you don't have, but it's so bizarre. I just wish we could go back to the engineer who designed the water system, but we can't. So,
well, I'd suggest we start with not requiring the roughly $4,600 that has been billed to be paid, and then how much more are we willing to do? I mean, you're down to your normal billing now. So if we subtract that, how much more are we willing to forgive here? Maybe
we're negotiating against ourselves. I love it.
$5,600.
Yeah, where's the auctioneer from Saturday night?
If it means anything, not to overstep, but I'm sure Ms. Mitz can give you these numbers.
We appreciate your comments, and we look forward to them.
I do. I can tell you that the actual bill for the 2-month period was $25,162.24. The water use for that period was $8,803. The sewer use was $16,358. So the clean water that goes into the sewer actually costs us double the water that comes into the building, if that means anything. As we're talking about getting some idea of concrete numbers, that's kind of it right there.
So the number was 8 of the water. 8?
Yes, sir, and I'm sorry, that's the total bill. That doesn't represent the overage over what we normally pay. The total bill, water use was $8,803. And total sewer use was $16,358.
This is the overage.
No, sir, that's the whole bill. I'm sorry.
The whole bill, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But, you would have paid about $2,400, $2,200 a month for both. And instead you paid...
It's more like $3,000 a month, wasn't it?
It's about $2,200 a month total. But instead we paid about $12,500.
Yeah, so you paid about...
Paid by about $10,000 each month.
Yeah. yeah, you paid about $20,000 more than you would normally.
The only point of what I was saying was that the sewer actually costs
Yeah,
twice
yeah.
as much as the water that
Yeah.
comes in.
Well, it's an accounting thing at this point. I couldn't imagine going higher than 2/3 of the amount as a council. I mean, really.
Is that,
I mean, maybe even that's too, I don't know. I was comfortable with 10,000, but apparently only you and I, Paul, were at that level.
I'm trying to
Look, I don't want to exhaust this. I'm happy to go to 2/3
What is 2/3?
of 20,000.
20 times 2 divided by 3.
$13,333.
Yes.
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm looking at the math that April and I did in our office, which is taking what he paid versus what it was for October and November, and then we added those together. That was $6,473. That's for the wastewater. And then we were looking at the water and going through the math and getting to, if we looked at our policy, that would be $500 was the max times 2. That's 1,000. Anyway, that gets really close to those numbers.
Mary?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. So, it looks like we're there on 2/3.
But I think, Ms. Mitz, in terms of how you bill it or whatever, you know, it's up to you. You can figure that out.
And I do have a question, as possibly clarification for Ms. Smithies regarding the actual cost to treat the water that went to the wastewater treatment plant, because that could make a difference if we just, on the wastewater side, because the water that was used was the water that was used. It took water out of our system and put it into our sewer. But as far as the chemical treatment, since it was clean, potable water that went right into the wastewater system, would that mean that it didn't cost the wastewater system anything extra to process it? I'd like to get your feedback on that.
It'd be still the same process, just like the rainwater, having to treat every single drop of water coming into the system.
Okay, so what we would do on our end of it is we would take 2/3 of the cost of the excess water use and the excess wastewater use. We'd come to that, it would come to the same dollar amount of that $13,333. And then what we would do is we just offer a credit on their account, and then we have general fund cover it to pay for it. And then that would far be enough of a credit to cover his 2 current bills. And then he would have roughly about an $8,000 credit on the account that we can work on doing a refund.
I just hope that this doesn't affect the quality of my pizza and gelato.
No, sir.
Well, we recognize, the importance of what you do in our town.
Thank you.
And just so we that is recognized, and wanting to make sure that you can stay. So,
thank you.
So,
what do you need from us?
I need a motion stating that City Council authorizes the reduction of the bill by 2/3 of excess usage.
So moved.
Yeah, we're basically adopting the second resolution with that number filled in.
That's correct. And if you can say 2/3, then I can just verify the numbers and get the exact.
Just a clarification, the resolution in the packet seems to have missed the word appeal after the word administrative. The record should reflect that that's added in.
Thank you. So do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Doring.
Yes.
Councilmember Chatou.
Yes.
Knudsen.
Yes.
Coverstein.
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to all those meetings.
Yeah.
So do we have time here before 9:30 to do 11.9?
My question is, do we have time to do 11.9 at our next meeting? Considering that we just got the staff report and this is a lot of discussion, and I think that they said we had 40 days to comment. Could we
We can certainly have it at the next meeting if there's any interest in assigning a council member or two to work with the staff. We can dive in a little deeper between now and the next meeting, and we may reserve the right to post it a little later and update the report.
I think the biggest issue is they're requesting comments by April 19th, which would give us one more meeting before that. So it would be beneficial to staff if we had a council liaison. However, I understand it is a significant amount of discussion.
That's something I would like to participate in. I don't know if anybody else has a.
I would.
You would?
I would do it with you, sure.
Okay, great. Thank you, and I appreciate you bringing this item forward. And
sorry for the tardiness.
no, that's okay. I think this gives us enough time, and we can dig.
Thank you for both doing that.
Sure. No, I think it's an important discussion. So, okay. So if we're going to continue this, does that take us to the end of our meeting? It appears to me. So I'm going to then adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jesse, for being here.